Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the South Miami City Commission. Today is Tuesday, May 21st. The time is approximately 7 p.m. We'd ask at this time that you please silence or turn off your cell phones. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Mayor Fernandez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bonich,
Here.
Commissioner Liebman,
Present.
Commissioner Corey,
Present.
Commissioner Kaye.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If we could please all stand for a brief prayer and moment of silence. And this evening, as we begin our reflection, I'd ask you to pray for Sonia Castro, a beloved member of the PBA family, who is sick, Lauren Weed, the daughter of Bob Weed from Strictly Tennis, who is hopefully on her way to recovering. And we'd actually pray for the souls of two of our community members, Mitchell Truby, who recently passed. Our condolences to the Truby family, and for the soul of Ella Adler and the Adler family due to her recent passing. Lord Jesus Christ, Savior of the world, we pray for your servants and commend them to your mercy. For their sake you came down from heaven, receive them now into the joy of your kingdom. For though they have sinned, they have not denied the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but have believed in God and worshipped him, their Creator. Amen. Amen. Please join us in the prayer of a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, do we have any presentations today?
Yes.
Could you please call the first presenter?
Evergreen Compensation Study Report, Rob Williamson.
Mr. Williamson, good evening. The floor is yours, sir.
Evening.
We good? Cool. Good evening.
Good evening.
So it's good to be back again. It was, I think, November, first week of November. I had the opportunity to be in this room. I was facing this direction, and I was talking to your team. And, we had orientation sessions and we had focus group sessions, and I had an opportunity to learn what it's like a little bit to work here and some of the challenges you face. But really what I learned more than anything during the time that I was here during outreach is that you've got a great team here. And through all of the sessions and in outreach, there was at least one or two people that would comment when I asked, hey, why'd you come to work here? They would tell me, well, I love the people that I work with, or I like what I do, or I like it here. And so I'm thinking, well, we'll see if the numbers bear that out. And then I started looking at it, and I find out that you have, 20 plus employees that have been here in service to the city for more than 20 years. Your average tenure is approaching 11 years. And I can tell you, as somebody that does this all over the country, that doesn't happen if folks don't believe in their leadership. That doesn't happen if they don't like serving the place that they're in. So it's been a great engagement thus far. We've really enjoyed working with your team, and we hope that we've got a recommendation for you as a result of our study that can help modernize your pay plan and move you into a more competitive position. The PowerPoint presentation will take me about, 15 minutes to go through, and then we'll be open for any questions that you might have. And we'll see if this will actually go to the next slide. Hey, look at that. So we're going to go through the process, the philosophy. We're going to talk a little bit about the review of the survey that we did for the employees, what the overall compensation outlook is, and then we're going to talk about the money slide, which is where everybody wants to go, but we'll get there in just a couple of minutes. So we wanted to focus in or prioritize the market competitiveness. That's what we heard initially was the most important thing. It wasn't the only thing, but it was definitely the most important thing. Turnover, vacancies were something that wanted to take care of, and one of the ways we can do that, money isn't everything, but being competitive is pretty important. And so they wanted to focus in on that. But then we also wanted to evaluate your plan to see what could we do to help modernize your plan and give employees a clear idea of how they could progress in their careers here in South Miami. Started with a kickoff call with your project leadership team. Then, as I said, I came here November 8th for in-person outreach with actually my analyst who was born and raised in the area, so that was a neat experience for him as well. And then basically one of the key things that we were asked to do was survey your employees. And we were also tasked with surveying the market and then putting that data together and reporting on it, which is where we find ourselves today, the presentation of study findings. Compensation philosophies, I said we want to be competitive with the market average. That doesn't mean that our recommendation is that you stay at the market average or that your most competitive positions as you continue to go through, it's a living, breathing thing, a pay plan is. So as you identify positions that might become more competitive, you might want to place them above the market average. We want a pay plan that's fair, we want one that's flexible, and then we know that you want to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, so it's got to be a fiscally responsible plan. This isn't a everybody gets a new car plan, right? We tried to make sure that it was fiscally responsible, and we worked with your team to get there. Open range pay plan, not a step plan. Why open range? Well, right now you have basically job classifications or job titles, and you have annual salaries. You don't have a dedicated or approved pay range where you'd have a minimum, midpoint, and maximum where an employee would know what their salary range is and how they could progress through it throughout their career. So we're recommending that you start with an open range pay plan. It gives you more flexibility to move high performers. You're not restricted by a step plan every year. And it gets us to that last bullet, which is you can progress employees based on tenure as well as performance. Something that I told your team when I was here that elected officials always want to know is, what did staff tell you? What was the participation like? And so I told them that it would be important for them to demonstrate to you how important this study was to them. And I think you see that with the overwhelming participation. 94% of your employees participated in the survey, letting us know in their own words what it is they do here in service to South Miami. And I have to tell you, that is vitally important because having a clear understanding of those essential functions allows us to more defensively compare them to the market. It gives us a more defensible set of data. It gives us a more defensible recommendation from which to provide you, the policymakers. And then you look at the classification summary there. That's every one of your job classifications that you had in the pay plan when we surveyed. Here again, 93%. We average around 65% across the country. So this is far and away above the national average. So kudos to your folks for leaning forward. Now we'll look at the compensation outlook nationally.
Mr. Williamson, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. I think
I'm sorry.
this is a hot bench here, so you often get questions mid-presentation. I
I
apologize.
know, it's just, because it means that, we're going through this real quick. What did the supervisor summary, can you explain that little part of it, the blue part?
Yes, so when we roll out the survey, every employee at South Miami has an opportunity to complete their employee survey. And after a 7 to 10 day time period, then we close that out and we move to a supervisor review. That's an opportunity that if a supervisor sees that what often happens is an employee may have underreported their essential functions, if they left something out, that gives the supervisor an opportunity to weigh in to true that up and make sure that they've reviewed it, here again, to make sure that it's accurate before we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So as we look at that competitiveness piece, the employee survey or the job assessment tool where I just showed you those participation numbers, that's the fair piece of the pay plan. We want to make sure that it's fair internally. What's the relationship between employees? How do they progress? What's the hierarchy, not only between departments, but overall in the organization? And then we move to the competitiveness piece, and that's the market salary survey that we conducted for you. Nationally, inflation is sticky. It's sticking around 3.2 to 3.5%, fluctuating in there. The good news is it's come down off the June 2022 high of 9%. This is obviously something that you as leaders are well aware of because your area, I'll have another slide here in a moment, your area of the state and the nation is one of the fastest growing for cost of living increases. Housing affordability, rental rates, inflation, everything keeps getting more expensive, but it seems like you're one of the more popular areas of the state, and it may be even more so here. And so what does that mean to your employees? Well, it means that it's a very competitive labor market, and it's one that you don't want to fall behind because within a 1 hour drive ring, employees have choices here. And as I said at the outset, you have a tenure that averages around 11 years. What does that mean? That means that at the midpoint, those employees that are starting to get those necessary certifications, licensure, they have experience, they become very valuable in a competitive labor market like the ones that you find yourself in today. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're staying competitive. We do see that the trend is softening as far as wages go, right around 4.5% now, which is good to a degree, but it's come off the highs. But bottom line, wages in the public and private sector are still going up, and it looks like inflation is going to be around for a little bit longer before we get to that desired Fed rate of 2%. As I mentioned, the cost of living here in your part of the world is some of the highest in the state and some of the fastest growing and changing as well. And so that impacts not only your employees, but your constituents, but it also makes for a very, very competitive labor market. So all of that setting the stage for bringing it back here locally to trying to identify what is the market that you compete in for talent, and how can we get some on the high end of the range, the low end of the range? How can we capture entities that might best represent public safety or law enforcement professionals, as well as director or senior leadership, all the way down to a maintenance worker 1 or introductory level positions. In other words, we wanted to have a defensible data set, and we wanted to have a wide range. How did we develop this list? It started with the kickoff call, and it kept going when we got here for outreach, where I asked your employees in each of the sessions, who do you think we should be comparing you to? Then we used our own market data. As I'm sure you're well aware at this point, Evergreen has quite an extensive footprint in Florida and in this market especially. And ultimately, that list was provided to your project leadership team. It was approved, and then we solicited the market for their salary data. A very robust 11.5 matches per classification. That is definitely on the high level. Here again, just like the high participation from your employees, this high participation in the number of data points that we had gives us a very defensible recommendation. And that's particularly important for y'all because we're recommending a significant change. Your current compensation structure is classifications and annual salary. So really the only way you can see what your average salaries would be is if you had a position that had multiple incumbents. You can average those together to kind of get an idea of what you're paying. But when you go to compare that to the market, virtually none of your competitors have titles and a salary. What they have is titles and a range that those employees are slotted into. So what this market response allows us to do is to recommend new market competitive pay ranges for the city, to modernize your pay plan. We did adjust for cost of living for those that fell out of the immediate area, and we needed to get at least 5 matches to report on salary range. I know this is a little small to see, but basically this is every one of your job classifications and what the market response was for those. Meaning when we averaged all of the responses together, we would get a average minimum, midpoint, and maximum. Minimum's important because if you're gonna post an open position, you're gonna wanna have a competitive minimum starting salary to where you have the best opportunity to get a wide range of qualified applicants. Right now, in talking to your folks during outreach, they would comment on how they used to get 30, 40 applicants when a job gets posted, and now they might get 3 or 4, and one of them is qualified. This will hopefully help correct that for you. The midpoint is where I'd want you to pay particular attention. That's that area in the middle. And here again, with your tenure at around 11 years, the midpoint becomes very important. So when we compared your average actual salaries to the midpoint of the market, we found that you were about 5% behind the market at the midpoint. So lagging the market slightly. We had some key considerations. As I mentioned to the employees when I was here, there's no recommendation that we would make that would have employees make less money than they're making now. So the methodology that we're using, if an employee is currently making an annual salary that's above where the methodology would place them, then no increase is given or no raise is given. But we don't recommend that their salary be reduced, okay? So the salaries would not be reduced, they would either stay the same or employees would be brought to where the methodology would take them in the plan. How we design our pay plans is we take the job classifications, we slot them into market competitive pay ranges, and then we take the employees that occupy those job titles and we move them into those new ranges. And we're recommending you do that with hybrid parity. When you hear parity, think time. We're using time to move employees into their new pay range. And hybrid parity uses a combination of the amount of time that an employee has spent in their current job, as well as partial credit for the amount of time that they've spent overall with South Miami, regardless of the job that they've been in. It's a true balance of those two components. Bring to minimum cost that you see there, that is the first thing that we do, regardless of the implementation option that you select. And the $73,000 cost of bring to minimum is included in the hybrid parity model.
Mr. Williamson, if I can, I have a question. Does anyone else have a question about this slide? Can you give us a sense of, in terms of the impacted employees in each three of these tiers, who makes up those cohort of employees? What job classifications are we talking about?
It's a total fruit salad. It
okay.
runs the spectrum. It is not like
No
only
one's
leadership or
overrepresented.
beginning positions. Yeah, it's a great question.
Okay.
It is literally every department is touched.
Yes. Madam Vice Mayor?
Is there one department in particular that was glaringly obvious when you looked at this? Because that's a lot of people.
Going
and-
from memory, maintenance worker 1 and 2 positions, roughly, I think, 10 to 12% behind. Heavy equipment operator positions, 15% behind. So the public works positions, some of those were behind. And that's not too unique to what I'm seeing around the country. But those positions, especially in an area that's growing faster, has experienced a lot of construction, a lot of private sector influences there. That was an area that we saw definitely behind.
Thank you
Some of
for
your
the questions.
leadership positions as well, we noticed, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, my apologies.
Just have one more.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Madam Vice Mayor.
When we get to the end of this, are you going to have a list, even if it's not presented now, that our city manager has, if nothing else, that says, okay, I'm looking at 68 employees if we're doing hybrid parity. And is there in what we are receiving a hierarchy of what is the most important, secondarily most important, going, tertiary and down the line of where the changes should happen if they are and when?
So it doesn't pick winners and losers or prioritize per se. The methodology doesn't differentiate between a maintenance worker 1 or a deputy county manager, or deputy city manager, excuse me. It doesn't look at that. What it looks at is, what is your current annual salary? That's number 1. And then it looks at a combination of how long has this employee been in their current job, and how long have they been in service overall tenure to South Miami. It calculates those together and we create hybrid years. And so an employee is moved into their new pay range based on those hybrid years. So I guess if you were going to say a priority would be if you have a long tenured employee where their hybrid years would be higher, then they would probably be moved, or they would definitely be moved into their pay range farther. What's the reason for that? Well, what also happens in a very fast-moving labor market is when you have open positions right now, you have to fill them. And to fill them, you have to pay a competitive wage. And often what that means is you might be hiring employees now close to, or in some instances, maybe even more than, a tenured employee that's occupying the same job. What this parity does is it separates those employees a little bit and gets rid of the wage compression, or reduces the wage compression that you have now. But it doesn't prioritize based on classification, family, or job. It is indiscriminate in that way. Second part of your question is it will provide the city manager, the solution file that we provided, it does provide a very detailed analysis and report of what each individual adjustment would be.
So Madam Vice Mayor, what I'm hearing is that the decisions of where we decide to allocate dollars to move people closer to their midpoint is a decision we'll make as a board. Not a recommendation that's coming from our consultant.
The great thing about this parity, or this recommendation we have before you, if you were to implement it all at one time.
Chip first.
Go
Sorry.
ahead, sorry.
What I was going to say is that the $345,500 cost for implementation of hybrid parity, that is a one-time implementation cost, and that would move employees into their new range. We provided an alternate option, which is where you'd have a 2-year implementation, and you'd separate this implementation over the course of 2 years, maybe to make it more palatable. And so we've just done an example of that where you'd have $250 in the first year and then basically $100,000 in year 2. So it would take you 2 years to get employees to a market competitive position and reduce those instances of wage compression. This is base salary adjusted for cost of living. So your staff would let you know what the overall fiscal impact would be with taxes and insurance and all those supplemental pays that you might have.
So, Mr. Manager, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just piggybacking on the Vice Mayor's question, if we remember, this commission supported increases above and beyond, and the budget that we're in, above and beyond the customary cost of living or merit increases as an additional adjustment. And we did prioritize based on your comment. If you remember, Public Works employees received 7% increase, and then other employees received 5%. And so these recommendations come, sort of on the heels of that, but imagine if those increases were not done, we'd be further away. What you would have seen would have been further away, but we sort of prioritized understanding that Public Works, we did our own sort of cursory review and realized that we were, behind. So that's why you saw 7% for that group and a 5% for others. So we sort of did prioritize in that case, and, that may still be the case in this scenario. And just want to clarify something, the city manager line was blank. I just want to clarify that they're not recommending not to compensate the city manager. It's negotiable, and that's why it's blank. I figured you would say that, but.
It's true. We're basing our recommendation on if we're retained for a staffing study after.
Hey, John, cut the mic.
Excellent. Excellent.
His
Sorry.
point is well served, though, because of the decision that you made, the adjustments that employees received helped reduce some of the costs you have now and improve your market position. Had you not done that, yes, you were more than 18 to 20% behind market in some areas. So, yeah, good on you for what you did.
Commissioner Lehman, you recognize, sir.
Thank you. So oftentimes, what may be a draw to work with a municipality or government is traditionally less stress, more job security, and benefits. So my question to you is, in the average compensation, is that all in? When I used to speak with the 2 previous city managers, and they'd say to bring on this employee is going to cost X. I said, how much is it going to cost me as a steward for the city? That X was never, 1.25 or 1.30 for the healthy benefits. So my question to you, and by the way, that's a very inflationary number, because as the salaries increase, the city's contribution increases, and so on and so on. So my question to you is, are these compensation averages all in for the city?
No, they're not.
The
Commissioner, I think
okay.
he mentioned,
That's-
just to clarify, because that's what I heard, I want to confirm. What I heard was it's just the direct salary impact, correct?
Base salary adjusted for cost of living, yes.
So but that's all in. I mean, that's part of compensation. I mean, that's what I need to see, because that's part of compensation. And every decision I make, I need to consider the impact to the taxpayers. And this doesn't show me the impact to the taxpayers. I need those numbers all
So
in.
Commissioner, I think we're just getting the benefit of the study report today. I would, again, if the manager wasn't doing that, I think the direction is clear based on your comment. I think our general sentiment, that when we talk about this in the budget context, which we're going to start that process here in a month or so, we're going to see this adjusted with the add-ons for benefits and other retirement contributions.
Correct. Certainly the exercise has begun to cost that out. Their scope was certainly just salary related, and then we would bring that information to you with the all-in cost. Thank you.
To your point, though, it hopefully gives you as policymakers a point of reference of base salaries here without any supplemental pays, without incentives, without retirement benefits without different, things that might be in your standard benefits basket, if you will. This gives you a frame of reference to know where are we in a competitive position relative to those folks that we're trying to compete with for the next generation of talent. And then you are very wise to talk about benefits because employees are absolutely making their decisions more and more now based on the benefits offerings of organizations. The years of the private sector lagging way behind the public sector and we're providing much better benefits, they're closing the gap. And so if salaries aren't competitive and your benefits are just even with the private sector, to your point, it'd be very difficult to be competitive. And so it's definitely something that will be part of our recommendations in our report that we provide to you, would be for you to take a look at your benefits offerings just like you did for the salary. You're now going to know where you compete on a salary compensation level. The next step for you is to know, do you compete for those key benefits offerings?
Thank you. Further questions? Please continue.
Sure. So as I said, the decision you'll have to make as you roll into your fiscal deliberations is what part of this implementation would you like to do? With your cost of living adjustments, basically it would impact every employee. So you have your usual cost of living adjustment, and then the hybrid parity would take care of your wage compression and make sure that employees are brought into a new market competitive pay range. This is no small thing, y'all. Going from having job titles and salaries to having established pay ranges is a dramatic improvement from where you find yourselves today. And so that's going to be a big change just on itself. When we finish, we're going to create a draft report that will memorialize everything that we've done that you can share out with everyone, because we all know that transparency leads to trust. The numbers are the numbers, the data is the data. And we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to review that. The Job Force Manager training is a fancy way of saying we're going to work with your staff to make sure they understand how to maintain the pay plan moving forward. And then a job description update, where we're going to make sure that all of those classification changes that were made, the internal equity in those changes that was made, we want to make sure we have a legally compliant job description and one that the essential functions match what the job description has. And then we'll move to project closeout after that.
Colleagues, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is
Commissioner
more-
Kaye, you're recognized.
This is more for the city manager and reflect, maybe just refresh my memory. Do we have end of the year performance reviews? If we do implement this sliding scale from the corporate, my memory, there's always an end of the year performance review where we adjust depending on what the score is going back and forth. Is that something that we have in place currently right now? Or is that something we might need to look to as well from a process perspective?
No, it is part of the process, which is determinant on your merit increase. So depending, there could be individuals that if they score below a certain line, that they would not be eligible for the merit. The cost of living is the cost of living, and those are set by the labor contracts, which those that are not under labor contract pretty much enjoy the same amount. But yes, the performance appraisal dictates your merit increase.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Corey, any questions?
No, I mean, I would be curious in knowing, at least when we were making this decision, how we compare in terms of benefits to some of the neighboring cities or maybe cities of our similar size. So that'd be great information for us to have when we're making our budget decisions.
Okay.
Madam Vice Mayor.
Along the same lines as Commissioner Corey, I'd love to know what cities we are comparing ourselves to so that we're comparing apples and apples and not apples and oranges. If we're a 12,000 resident city with a 20-some-odd million dollar budget, I wouldn't want to think that I'm being compared to a city with 60,000 residents and $200 million or whatever.
To your point, here's the list. Those in bold are the entities that returned data. And, one that might jump off the page there is Miami-Dade County, right? How in the world are we going to compare y'all to Miami-Dade County? Well, for every position you wouldn't. But a maintenance worker one at Miami-Dade County and a maintenance worker one here, you better believe that's competition. So for some of the positions, they are. Yes, when you get into the leadership positions, we adjusted it to where we wouldn't be comparing a finance director here with a finance director there. We might be 2 levels below that for them, to where we're trying to line up the essential functions, the complexity, the leadership, the scope, to where we can make sure we're getting to more of a defensible comparison. And that's really ultimately what we're trying to get to. It's a great point, because that's your market as it relates to the recommendations we're bringing to you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, we're looking at all these cities and counties. They're all significantly bigger than us, maybe a few that we can match up to. But I think what we want to try to do as a city is be competitive. We always strive to be best in class. I mean, we've been trying to do that. So that's something we should definitely look into as we continue to move forward on that.
Commissioner Lehman, you've been awfully quiet. Any comments?
Yeah, certainly. So just general comments, don't feel pressure to respond. So, I looked at three things prior to the study. 1, we have a great staff. 2, we've had no turnover, no attrition. And 3, our staff is happy. So when we conduct a study like this, well, the other thing I'll tell you is the unions are very happy. No one negotiates more than the union. The unions start if they wait till the next morning and start negotiating after they reach a contract, then they're late. So everyone was happy. So in a case like this, we're only negotiating against ourselves. It's public, and I just don't see I just don't see the benefit to the city. I mean, just on the very low end, we're talking about, what was the number? It was over $500,000.
No, it was lower than that. Can we go back a slide?
Well,
Sorry.
no, it's okay, but as per
350,000.
my meeting with the city manager, he told me minimum $500,000 to bring us to the lower threshold. That doesn't include benefits. So now you're talking about $650,000. I just want this commission to take ownership, and I just want them to be transparent, to honor all this. And I was told it could be phased in 1 or 2 years. You will have to raise taxes. I mean, you're looking at a quarter basis point.
I'll just jump in on that really quickly, because I know it's a concern. I'll say the following. I think, look, these are understanding where we are in the market and understanding and realizing what our limitations are and responding to it are two different things. The data is the data. I don't think we do ourselves a disservice by, we talk a lot about having a team culture here. And part of having a team culture is being honest about what the market is and being honest about what we can do to meet the market where we can. Are we going to meet the entirety of this benchmark? I don't know, Commissioner Lehman. I don't know if our means, we'll see what comes back this year. I don't know if our means will match our ambition in that regard, but I don't see the detriment in doing that. And again, the unions and our manager certainly will have lots of conversation about what can be negotiated, but those limitations are real, and they'll be on the table as well when we actually have those negotiations. So I think, right now we're talking about this in a vacuum, and I recognize your point. We've got to be very conscious about how this could drive the budget in ways that, affect taxpayers, but I don't want to leave this conversation with a definitive statement that anyone here is raising taxes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to sort of shed a little different light. I mean, the city has had challenges as it relates to even public works, the standpoint of vacancies, even offering an individual job and then not taking it because of an offer from somewhere else that was higher, challenges in recruiting at public works. So that stems from, our compensation. And certainly we've talked a lot about police and vacancies there. And when we did the 5% additional increase for this budget, some of the early data showed that we were in the bottom third of some of our peers. So there have been challenges the city has had in retaining and filling certain positions, of which there's a direct correlation to compensation. And certainly the $500,000, Commissioner, I was throwing as a number because I knew we needed to bring benefit calculations, which we haven't totally run yet, but being that we were in the, let's say mid 300s, when you have benefits, definitely going to be over 500K. So that's where that number comes from, but we'll give you that data once we run the numbers based on what scenarios we may be looking at.
Madam Vice Mayor, you have a question?
Sorry,
Sorry, you have a
I
follow-up. My apologies. Go ahead.
I just want to thank the city manager for clarification.
Thank you. Madam Vice Mayor.
I have a question for the city manager. We all know kind of, I come from West Miami, which is another little city, and I didn't see them on the list, but I'm wondering if it's a good idea for us to have this conversation with them as well, because they face something similar to what we are. They have their own police department. I don't know about Public Works because I'm not that keyed into it, but maybe it's worth a conversation with them to also see where they are, because they've grown up a little bit, in a different way than we have, but they're actually making it happen, like on the borders of the city and what have you, incorporating larger buildings, blah, blah, blah. So I think it'd be interesting if they're willing to have that conversation with us to see how we compare to them, so that we have something. I mean, all of those cities are great, but I think if we're looking at one that's very similar to us, it would be them.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, any comparable that we can get our hands data, on the data is welcome. I will, and I think Rob alluded to it, I just want to be mindful, scale of a government, that doesn't necessarily say that the position's different, right? The skill set and experiences needed for certain functions are the same in a big government versus a small government, right? You mentioned the maintenance worker. Certainly, if you're managing at scale from a leader standpoint, as the CFOs and finance directors and people that are managing things that are at scale, there's definitely a relative difference. But the core competencies that may be needed to be in solid waste or a crane operator are the same regardless of size. So that's where that competition comes in, where maybe the data from a Miami-Dade County or even a Coral Gables that's bigger is relevant to us because we compete for those same individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, yeah, if we get, we'll certainly reach out to, like we reach out to Miami Shores, they didn't provide the info. They're kind of similar size. I did see another like-size community. But I would caution us just to focus more on the classification and what are the true comparables, because it could be a big government, it could be a small government, and separate ourselves, those that are scale-related, to understand, okay, we shouldn't compare ourselves on that position. I'll call, finance director is a perfect example.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. In general, I agree with you. I just think it's beneficial to us to see
Certainly.
what we're looking at, with our, I don't know how you say it in English, so I'll just stop, go and look.
Our sister city.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just to build off that a little bit, when I was here for outreach, yes, we had comments that this is a great place to work. But I have to be honest, it was not all rainbows and unicorns. There were quite a few folks that talked about the, lack of staffing and the fact that they were noticing that, salaries were falling behind because this information is readily available. And so there were folks that brought information into the meetings to, let us know, hey, this is what just got posted and this is more than I make type of deal. So I feel like just because you may not have a lot of turnover with 128 employee operation full-time, thereabouts, when you do have vacancies, it has a tremendous impact, more so than a 300, 400 person operation is definitely something I would say. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the numbers we're providing to you are the market average. This is not positioning you at the 70th percentile of the market. When we look at, and I wrote down a few of these, maintenance worker 1 with 14 data points. That means we had data from 14 different cities or counties. You're 12% behind market right now. If we look at a park superintendent, you're 8%
Again, that's
behind market.
That's 12% from the midpoint, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
8% for park superintendent, and then the heavy equipment operator with 11 peers, you're 16% behind market. You had some that were above market as well. So you have some positions that are performing well to market. But overall, this is just at the average. Right?
Our commission salaries are top of the
Yeah,
list, for sure.
They were not, that was not part of it, sure.
Yeah.
But it's important to know that this is not, hey, we're behind market, but we're looking at the 80th percentile. This is at the average. And so this doesn't place you as a premier employer of choice, I wouldn't think yet. It's a step in that direction for sure. But And I think the staff was clear that they do love working here, they love the people that they work with, they love the community that they serve, but that they know that they're not necessarily where they should be in the market.
Thank you for that. With that, I think in the interest of time, we'll close the conversation unless there's a pressing need for a comment or question. Mr. Williamson, thank you for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, we're grateful
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity. I want to say that Chip was great, and Samantha, no brag on her, she was amazing, responsive, very tough with the questions and challenging everything we did all along the way, and we've really enjoyed the opportunity to serve you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I'd certainly be remiss if I didn't thank this commission for supporting the funding to get this done. And it's important because it's the framework of what we do as a city and obviously as a service organization. So appreciate that because it's very forward-thinking and it'll have great results for the city over the long term.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. With that, let's move on to item 2, Madam Clerk.
Persons with Disabilities Registry.
Chief Hatfield, you're recognized, sir.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, it's my honor and privilege to stand before you tonight to introduce 2 programs that we're going to bring to the city of South Miami to help our folks with special needs in our community. The first one will be the Persons with Disabilities Registry Program, and Lieutenant Aguiar will give presentations on that, and followed by Project Lifesaver with Officer Del Sol giving a presentation on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief, short on time. Back in January, the state passed Protect Our Loved Ones Act, basically authorizing local law enforcement agencies to create and maintain a registry for special needs. It was January, the chief came back pumped up. He wanted this program to better serve our community and those vulnerable individuals, and enlisted the help of Brandon Diaz and Samantha Lujan, who really assisted me in putting this program together. I believe Brandon already had experience from Miami Lakes. He had worked on a similar program, and we got the help of Assistant Chief Larry Corbett. We put together this video to try to promote the program and try to get as many people to register. We already have our application online, and I'll have Mr. Webster play the video. Give you a little insight on what the program is all about.
Hi, I'm Assistant Chief Larry Corbin with the South Miami Police Department. We're excited to announce the Persons with Disability Registry Program. This voluntary program was created to better serve those with unique or special needs in our community, especially during an interaction with a police officer. Each participant will receive a door or window decal to display outside their home, allowing responding officers to know that a family member is on the registry. The registry is intended to compile and maintain a list of individuals who have special needs due to mental or neurological disabilities. Each participant will also receive a card and a wristband with the special needs logo, letting officers know that the individual is on the registry. The registry can also provide the officer with the parents' or guardian's emergency contact information. If you or a loved one live in South Miami and would like to participate, you can find more information about the voluntary program, including how to register, on our website. Thank you for your time. Let's work together to make our community safer and more inclusive.
So yes, we're very excited about this program, and just to mention some of the disabilities which are not mentioned in the videos: autism, blind, deaf, nonverbal, intellectual disability, dementia, or any other cognitive impairment. So they would go online, apply, it would get screened by one of our communication officers. If they're accepted into the program, their information is placed into our system. So when we respond for a call for service, the officer will be notified that this person has a disability, and for example, if they're nonverbal communication, the officer's better equipped and better prepared to deal with these individuals. And we would like, we're gonna start promoting this program every month with the help of Mr. Diaz. And if you have any questions, all yours.
Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Kaya, you're recognized.
So some of the programs that we've seen throughout the county, can you talk about how inclusive it's been, how the growth, the impacts, how do we attract besides doing social and all the marketing? Is there, can we really figure out how many people we can touch with this and be responsive on that? Have we seen data or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
no, we haven't.
It's pretty new?
We've had, yeah, it's pretty, the law just came out in January authorizing the local law enforcement agencies. There's other programs that have been in existence by other agencies in the past, but this law just came out actually authorizing local law enforcement agencies to create this list and maintain it. I could reach out and find out to see what success other cities have had. But we're going to start promoting it very soon and reach out to our local schools and maybe speak to the children who may have a disability.
So the other thing that we can also do, we're starting a community board for special needs and all that stuff. So if whatever registry, I don't know if we can talk about this, but figure out how we can get a little bit more inclusive into some of our community boards where we can have a little bit more response of what's needed, not only as an acknowledgement of what they need, but we also have that feedback coming back to the commission, and we can react on policies that will be more inclusive to that type of community.
Of course, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Madam Vice Mayor.
Hi there. Are we going to be able, and I don't know if any of us know this answer, I know that Commissioner Regalado was here talking about a sticker that goes on your car. Will we be able to kind of cross-reference for the people that have that live here so we can reach out to them if they're not reaching out to us?
Well, I placed the decal. You guys have a copy of the decal? We don't know what their decal looks like, but I'm sure that we could get that information.
Yeah.
But as far as cross-referencing right now, there's nothing that we have in place.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Liebman?
I just want to say, Lieutenant Aguilar, great job. It's good to see you. We haven't seen you
Thank you.
in a while. You did a great job. How many years have you been with the department?
20 years, sir.
All right, good, excellent. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I have the same a question along the lines that the Vice Mayor asked, which is, this registry, is there a way that actually it'll get communicated to the officer who's dispatched? So if they're registered, our CAs will communicate out to the officer that this person, there's someone in the household on the registry. So beyond the line of sight reference, that's information that they'll get real time when they're responding to a call.
Correct.
Great, fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Chief, the second item?
Project
Officer
Lifesaver.
Del Sol will be presenting on Project Lifesaver, which will piggyback off of this program.
Thank you.
Hi,
Officer-
good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I am the traffic unit here at South Miami, also known as Officer Del Sol. I'm going to speak to you today about the Project Lifesaver. It's pretty much just similar. It's pretty much similar, just like the autism program, but just a little different in the sense that when not only is it for autism, but it is also for the elderly with Alzheimer's and any other cognitive disorders as well. So the big question is, what is Project Lifesaver? So he's gonna go ahead and play a video for you, and then if you have any other questions, I'll go ahead and answer them for you.
Well, a pair of drownings this past summer led to massive searches, and it also claimed the lives of 2 young boys with autism.
Those deaths are raising awareness of a program that can help first responders track missing persons more quickly. Rich Nye shows us how the system works and gives families a safe peace of mind.
Children with autism sometimes have a tendency to wander off. If they do, this device and that chirp you hear might save their life.
They don't understand safety. They don't understand depths of water, things like that. So there's a lot more risks in being able to teach a person with autism a lot of the safety awareness that they would need to remain safe.
The Wayne and Decatur Township and Morgan County Fire Departments ran a rescue simulation at Daymar Services using Project Lifesaver.
The first thing we do is to do a 360 because the victim could be in the home or whatever the last seen location was.
The receiver listens for a radio signal sent by a bracelet transmitter worn by people who tend to wander off.
It's over here. To our right.
You know that time is critical, so you were hustling.
Absolutely, yes, because kids, especially kids with autism, are attracted to water. So whenever, we go on a search, we take everyone seriously. Here she is. I found her. I found the victim. Are you okay?
The drill victim, Marlena, was found about 300 yards away in just over 5 minutes. Searches this summer in Brownsburg and Perry Township took many hours before the boys with autism were found in retention ponds 100 yards from the homes.
I know it would have made a difference because they would have been found, a lot sooner instead of overnight or, hours later. So it would have made a difference. So, it's if you have a child that wanders, has a history, they need to be on Project Lifesaver.
Kim Cease's son Derek was the first person in Indiana to wear the tracking device when he was 10 years old. He's 21 now and still wears it for safety. With Project Lifesaver, it only took firefighters just a few minutes to find Marlena because she was wearing this bracelet. Contact your local public safety agency for more information. I'm Rich Knight, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
Okay, so thank you. So the next big question is, how's it going to work? Pretty much, they're going to reach out, either the family member, the caregiver is going to reach out to South Miami Police Department. They're going to have a one-on-one consultation with us and find out if they meet the qualifications to be on the program. If they do, the picture you see right there is what is called the Project Lifesaver portal. That is where we're going to enter all the information for the individual, and they're going to also have a tracking device number. That number specifically is very important. That number is going to go into the portal. It could be accessed by any officers that I give permission to access in the portal. If for whatever reason they go missing, they will contact South Miami, let us know their last known location and how long they were missing for. From there, we will get that tracker number, enter it into the device that you saw in the video, and then go ahead and do the search. Now, the search, the radius of that device is within a whole mile. The antenna that goes on the car is only 3/8 of a mile. So the 3/8 of the mile will be, if they've been missing for quite some time, it will pretty much narrow down the search of the area. And as soon as we pick up that chirping sound, then we would exit the vehicle and then conduct the rest of our search at that time. Okay. The next big question is, how much is it going to cost? Each individual that's registered into the program is going to be a starting cost of $347. That includes a 1-year supply. The company guarantees each tracking device for up to 5 years. If anything happens to it, they will replace it with no charge. All the items that are listed within the package, the startup package, will be given to the caregiver or the family member of that individual. They will be conducting their own battery replacements. It's going to be replaced every 60 days. They will be taught how to replace the battery, and they will be also given a battery tester. The battery tester, they would have to check every single day the bracelet to make sure that it's in working condition and that it's still active. An electronic search specialist, right now South Miami currently has 4, including myself. We do not have to recertify every 2 years, but every other officer that we do certify as an electronic search specialist will have to recertify every 2 years. Right now, I believe the chief has in mind to train 2 officers per shift, which is going to total 8 additional officers, and it will be a total of 12 of us that will be trained as electronic search specialists. To become an electronic search specialist, you have to find 3 tracking devices within a total of 15 minutes. If you cannot find 3 of them within 15 minutes, you do not pass. And that's it. You guys have any questions for me?
Thank you, Officer Del Sol. Any questions, colleagues? Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
On one of the slides, it was of what is being provided to the families. The first thing that was on there, it was like, sorry, I don't know if you have a copy of it, but
Transmitter?
so then there's no way for them to have something to find them. The only people
No.
that have it is us.
Correct.
Okay.
We have 2 devices at the moment. So the little circle that you saw on the band, that has a specific number. When we register them into the Project Lifesaver portal, that number, it's kind of like their ID that's associated to the number. So for whatever reason, if anybody has to go in there and find that number, they just go into the portal once they're reported missing, because a lot of times the caregivers might not have that information to provide to law enforcement. So we would grab that tracking number and then just put it on the device.
Yeah, so it only finds that person, not
Correct.
pinging everybody who's around them. Okay.
Correct.
So I just was wondering if parents get any device to try to find their kids before
No.
we find them. Okay. Thank you. And by the way, thank you very much for being with the SOMI kids today.
No problem.
Commissioner Lieben?
Yeah, I just want to thank you as well for a great presentation, very
Thank you.
professional.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for everything you do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corey, you're recognized.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned that when the parents submit for this, they still need to qualify. Is that just a medical diagnosis, or is that something?
They would have to, for example, the Alzheimer's. There is many people that are not diagnosed with Alzheimer's, even though their family members might say, oh, they're showing a little bit of signs of Alzheimer's, but aren't necessarily diagnosed yet at that point. So once they are diagnosed at that point and they do have Alzheimer's, because their level might be very, it might be severe, it might be very, in the beginning stages, then it would be, I guess, determined at that time whether or not. Because remember, every single person that is on the registry is going to be $347. So we want to make sure that it's not just a family member that's saying, oh yeah, they might be forgetting things here and there, but isn't really necessarily diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Commissioner Kaye?
Thank you so much, by the way. The $347, that's paid by,
That will be up to however you guys would like to do that. They also have a contract where there are some departments that when you sign them up, you have to sign a contract. The contract is all on the portal, so I could provide that to you guys if you need it. Some agencies do provide the cost of it for free. Others provide or charge them like a $10 startup fee. If they can't pay the $10, the department really doesn't force them to pay, the $10. That would be up to you guys, however you would like to do that. But it's really up to you guys if you want to have them, because the chances are if they have to pay the $347 themselves, they probably won't.
okay. And then other programs throughout the county, throughout
We
other
are the-
municipalities?
So
Are we the only one?
only one in Miami-Dade at this point. I know the city of Miami was reaching out. He is trying to get in contact because Project Lifesaver is not as promoted as the Autism New Registry program. I was actually at the registry when it came out. April 1st, when we did the caravan, or April 2nd, was when Miami-Dade County announced it. So it's like Lieutenant Aguilar said, it's fairly new. But for the Project Lifesaver, we are the only one, and because there isn't so much media on it, other departments, I don't think, are necessarily aware of the Project Lifesaver program. Now, the director that did our training, he is gonna reach out to all these departments to see if with some type of promotion, they can get the other agencies to come together. I think he told me that Pinecrest was trying to get into the program as well, and the city of Miami.
Who's the vendor again? The company providing?
Project Lifesaver International.
So that's the name of the company. Is there
Yes.
any other competition?
No.
This is the only company that does it?
Correct.
And are they a nonprofit or a for-profit?
A
Do-
nonprofit.
My only question, and I don't expect you to have the answer right away, is how many calls for service of this kind do we get a year? I mean, and again, and I don't need a question today, an answer today, excuse me. I asked the question because you mentioned the cost
Mhm.
of people signing up. And I think that obviously these searches, if the people are not equipped, can become very manpower intensive.
Correct.
So I just throw that out because this could be a significant cost savings to us, even if we're underwriting the initial cost of people to get registered and pay for the equipment, because it's going to result in, more effectively utilizing our police resources. So again, I think it'd be helpful to get a sense, Chief and Officer Del Sol, how many calls we've gotten historically for, lost elderly or kids with autism. What was the forced deployment around? those kind of events, because I think it would help inform, how much we want to commit to underwriting the program. Madam Vice Mayor, you had a follow-up question.
Do we have any kind of budget set aside for this at this point, or is this something we would be looking to fund for next year?
I would have to get back to you on
Right.
that.
Oh, wait, we know?
Just really quick, I just wanted
Chief-
to add, sorry.
Chief, those are hard acts to follow.
Yeah.
When we did have the startup, when we got the equipment, we do have 2 tracking devices as of right now. We haven't necessarily distributed it yet, just because we have to have those 2 devices for the training of the officers. But we do have 2 parties already that are in mind. One, she goes missing like every other 2 weeks, and then the other one is a gentleman that we're trying to reach out to his mom. So.
Thank you for the presentation, officer.
Thank you.
Chief, that limp looks,
Thank you, Lieutenant Aguiar, Officer Del Sol.
Chief, that limp looks like it's still pretty bad.
It's good.
You doing okay?
You saw my video with the
I saw the video complex. I
got
saw,
it all taken care of.
but you got up there a little gingerly, so.
Yeah, so from the budgetary standpoint, we're gonna take it out of the police budget, from that perspective. We will have money, set aside from that, whether it be asset forfeiture or whatnot, but we wanna look at it from, as Officer Del Sol mentioned, screening the folks properly, making sure that we're properly utilizing those funds to do it. And I don't think that we're gonna have that many people that would be cost prohibitive for us to register folks.
Okay.
And as Lieutenant Aguiar had mentioned, the special needs program registry, we had been developing that prior to Commissioner Regalado's presentation to you all. We were just waiting for our videos and everything to come together to be able to give a nice big presentation. But to the Vice Mayor's point, that sticker program that they have is for the vehicles, not necessarily for the cars, and it is a great opportunity. We will reach out and try and leverage that registry if it can be shared between agencies, so that we can piggyback off of that as well. But our officers are aware of it as far as it being placed on the vehicles. But I think there's opportunities across both their lanes and ours. But being that we have this dividing city, broken up. As I think the city manager puts it, a hole in the donut areas, is an opportunity for our registry to be for the city of South Miami, and for Miami-Dade's registry to be for those fill-in areas.
Sorry,
Commissioner Liebman, I think the manager, you wanted to say something as well?
I'll close it up.
Okay, thank you.
just a quick question. I understand it's not a substitute, and that children and adults, especially if they have memory issues, may not remember their phone. But obviously, there's phone tracking devices, and if you have a child or adult in the house that's at risk. So where I'm going with this question is have you had any calls to date or before you were here where people handed you their phone and said, hey, is that what people have been using in the interim?
Absolutely. So Project Lifesaver's been around for a while. It's a nationwide database. When I came here, I realized Miami-Dade County had not been utilizing it. Yes, there are other opportunities, right? You have the GPS, Find My iPhones, all those apps and stuff, but they don't work in water either. This is an RF transmitter that allows for it to be working in water areas, so that there's an important distinction there. But there are other technologies, yes, sir.
Okay, in the interest of time, Mr. Manager, please close us out.
Well, since you made the reference to the limp, I just, the chief's starting a nonprofit that's called Operation Safe Hamstrings, so I just wanted to share that. But no, I wanted to thank the chief and our police department for looking for opportunities to better serve our community in an innovative way. And this speaks to that, right? And especially when nobody else in the county, the entire county, is looking at it. So I appreciate them, always looking at how to be better every day. So thank you to you all.
Thank you sincerely. Okay, colleagues, we have an add-on item. Is there a motion to add on FA?
I'll move the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
If you could read the resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution of, we have to vote to add,
We have to vote to, I believe we have to vote to add the item on.
We do.
Yes. If you could read the resolution, please.
a resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, retroactively approving and authorizing the waiver of certain event-related fees and costs in the amount of $1,489.30 pursuant to section 15B-6 of the city code for a special event known as the Jaden Higgins Youth Football Camp, presented by First Round Management, held on May 19th, 2024 at Palmer Park.
Thank you for that. Is there any objection to the item being added on? If there's no objection, let's just show it as added on. Thank you. We'll take that up when we get to the resolutions.
Passes added to agenda.
Okay.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
Is that considered a consent item, or is it goes as a?
No, I'd like to discuss it.
Okay.
So we'll take it up with the resolutions.
Okay.
Okay. I see we have a motion or we have a request to defer the minutes of May 7th.
Yes.
Without objection, we'll show those as deferred to our next meeting. Mr. City Manager, is there a report?
Yes, sir. Deputy City Manager is going to present.
Madam Deputy, good evening.
Good evening. Registration for youth summer camp at the community center is open. That's for kindergarten through 6th grade. And for the youth tennis camp at Dante, that's also open for ages 4 to 17. If anybody wants any more information on that, you can visit, email, call our Parks and Rec Department. Those camps run from June 10th to August 9th. A reminder that on Monday is Memorial Day, so City Hall will be closed. For our residents, garbage pickup for Monday will occur on Tuesday. Tuesday's pickup will occur on Wednesday, with Thursday and Friday remaining on regular schedule. I'm happy to report that the city worked with our federal lobbying team on submitting requests for consideration by Congresswoman Salazar's office, and we were advised yesterday that she did submit our request for $2.4 million to complete sub-area K and begin sub-area J for septic to sewer. So we'll keep you posted on that. And lastly, excuse me, Show Me Second Saturdays. We held the last one a couple of weeks ago. It was a great success, especially for the first one. We have some tweaks to make the next one even better. That's on June 8th, and tonight seems to be the night of videos. We have a short recap if you would like to see it.
Please.
That's the end of the report.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager? Commissioner Lieben?
No, I just want to thank everyone in staff that was involved in this. I know events are very, very time consuming, so, and I know especially the first one, so thank you to everyone that produced this great event.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Thanks to you guys. My husband doesn't thank you. I managed to spend $200 in like 15 minutes. And so I'm sure he wasn't very excited about being there after that, but everything was great. I had a really good time. My kids were actually there, and they said it was good. So I imagine, you know, they're younger, obviously, and they thought it was great, and they loved the guy playing the violin and not so much the guy with the fire. That was a little scary.
The
But,
fire guy was a surprise to all of us.
but it was very cool. Thank you very
We
much.
might have asked for more insurance if we knew that.
He was fired.
Okay. Colleagues? No. And I just want to thank Mr. John Edward Smith as well for being another person behind a lot of the good stuff happening in our town center. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, and we can also add Mr. Alonso as a sponsor of the event.
We can formally, on the next sign, we'll give him a promotional credit. Okay, moving on. Mr. City Attorney, your report, please.
Just a quick, you had asked for an update on the dry cleaner in and around Lot B, the issue that was there. There is a battle over trust assets that has been going on for quite some time. The property was actually transferred in February by the receiver to one of the parties, one of the trusts of one of the parties, and the whole thing is going to jury trial on July 8th. So that's where things stand at the moment.
Okay, so
Still
that
up in the
the
air.
party in possession does not have the ability to dispose of the real estate?
It doesn't appear so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure about
Or
that.
are the proceeds of any sale just encumbered until there's a disposition of the case?
It looks like that, and it looks like the property itself
Is
may
encumbered.
be encumbered
Okay.
until the disposition of the case. But we don't know that for sure.
So the only reason I asked the question is there was another property that was part of the same joint venture in South Miami that my understanding was recently transacted, but it was transacted to one of the parties.
Yes, well, if it's anything like the dry cleaner
Then it's the
property,
same
it would be the same
situation.
situation. The receiver transferred it to one of the entities involved.
Okay. So now that that's very cryptic. Anyone have any questions? Okay.
We're
Any, sir, you're recognized.
Related, actually, we're still waiting for the title for Lot B.
Yeah, we have not received that
Okay,
yet.
because they share a property line.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, just a future report, if you can kind of give us an update on and the manager, what's happening on our annexation petition. And then secondly, maybe we can bring back just an update on the status of our interlocal amendment with the county on waste management.
Yes.
Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
I requested from the city manager as well that we try to review it once a month, at least, the status updates on the annexation process.
Okay. Yes. Mr.
Thank you,
Levy.
Mayor. Not really related, but we haven't discussed in a long time. And when you said waste management, what is the status? Because we're still in the due diligence period. What is the status with the Public Works contract with the Waste to Rails company? It's been a long time, and we've heard nothing.
So the county is still, they've not made a final determination on that. We've tried to move it ahead.
City Attorney, if you speaking to the microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we had, a couple of weeks ago, we had a discussion with the county attorney's office regarding the interlocal agreement, the modifications that we would need. They were concerned because they did not have a deal yet with the waste to rail operator. And it's not, when I say they were concerned with moving ahead with our interlocal. That was the kind of the gist of the conversation. The Commissioner Regalato's office is pushing for us to get our interlocal modified to accommodate that, so that once a deal with the waste to rail operator is put in place, there's nothing else to do. We've got, everything is kind of locked in. But the county is still trying to figure out their solid waste strategy, and that may be part of it, or it may not be. They're still working through those issues. And I'm sorry I don't have any more information than that. They just haven't.
I can add a little bit more color because was part of that call and also had some subsequent calls both with Commissioner Regalato and the lobbyists for the company that we are under contract with. So the county came back to American Waste Services and asked them also to consider providing them with an option to remove some of the sludge that's been accumulating at the southern landfill. And so they have asked them for pricing as well as the means and methods for the removal of that sludge. It's become quite a nuisance in terms of the smell for people in Cutler Bay in particular. If you go on Instagram, you'll see Commissioner Cohen Higgins and Mayor Mearbot actually talking about the situation out there. They're getting quite a few resident complaints. So our agreement is actually pretty instrumental to the sludge removal because it has to be removed on a certain ratio of waste to sludge. And so the waste that we would collect would actually be the mix that would allow the provider to remove it out of that southern landfill. So My expectation is that our interlocal will probably be taken up at a commission meeting in June, based on my conversations with both the Office of Commissioner Regalado and the Commissioner. She's very displeased with the fact that the county has been taking such a long time to come up with an interim solution for waste disposition generally, and sees our solution as one that's fairly turnkey and executable, and that certainly has a lot of pricing advantages for the county. So she seems pretty committed to it. Her staff was pretty unforgiving of the county attorney's office on the call. That's putting it kindly. The big issue, there were collateral concerns about other jurisdictions taking advantage of our facility for disposition. We reminded them that every city has its own interlocal, and that, you know, just as we are asking for an amendment, they'd have to go to the county to ask for an amendment to dispose at our facility. We reminded them that we would be paying them the tipping fees on the trash that would be disposed out of our facility. And lastly, there's, you know, for their county's contracts, and this is probably more detail than we need, there are put requirements, meaning they have to dispose of a certain minimum amount of waste. For, you know, the former Wheelabrator site required a minimum disposition threshold. As we all know, our piece of the overall disposition puzzle is so de minimis that even if we were allowed to stay out of that system, it really would have no impact on the economics of the deal for the county, or that deal for the county. So I think we're well positioned to kind of have that approved. I think the issues that were raised, you know, our city attorney did a masterful job of addressing all of them. And, you know, so my expectation is hopefully sometime in June, we'll have something positive to report, at least with respect to our interlocal. I don't know what the status is of the contract approval for American Waste with the county as a potential vendor. That's still evolving. Yes, Commissioner Kaye.
To the city attorney and maybe you, Mayor, I've had a lot of conversations with a couple county commissioners in respect to this particular project. I was not pleased that they're not really aware of this particular project. Do we know if there's a push, maybe from Commissioner Regalado, for maybe Jimmy Morales or maybe the county mayor, anything like that, that it could be, because I don't even think it's been discussed at the county commission, this particular project, and a decision therefore hopefully coming in the future.
So it's been discussed, there have been discussion items on this, not solely on this, on the solid waste strategy for the entire county. This was included as one of the options that are out there, one of the alternatives.
It was briefly spoken about.
Yeah, briefly. I'll be briefly, yeah. In terms of the specific push, I think they're trying to sort out, the administration has not determined their ultimate strategy here, and this is one potential aspect of that strategy. So we want to have our solid waste interlocal, I think, in place. So when they determine which direction they're going, and as the mayor had mentioned, the mayor was very kind, characterizing my participation in that call. The mayor was very forceful and masterful, I got to tell you. The county attorney's office was not, they were reticent to move forward, and Commissioner Regalado's office was also very forceful. So this looks like it's going to get put on an agenda soon. And
good. That's what I was asking. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you for that report. Public remarks. Do we have no one registered for public remarks? Is there anyone in the chamber who'd like to come forward to speak on any item before this commission? Seeing no one, will close public remarks. Is there anyone online, Madam Clerk?
Anyone online in Zoom that would like to make a public remark, please raise your hand. Nope.
Seeing no one on Zoom, we will close public remarks this evening. I think that's a first. So, can you read the discussion items, Madam Clerk?
Proposed ordinance to allow urgent care center and GR zoning district.
So I asked for this discussion item and hopefully a referral to the planning board. I was approached recently by one of our local healthcare providers. They're looking at a property that they would lease in the city of South Miami. Currently, our GR zoning district does not allow for the location of an urgent care center. I think it's a use that could work well there. I think it's a service that, we could benefit from. My only concern and my comment and direction to the city attorney has been that I do not want this to become an emergency services facility. So while people may come in there for, treatment and find out that situation is more dire and have to be transported out of the facility by ambulance. I do not want them receiving ambulatory services or delivering people to the facility via ambulance. And so I think that portends a whole lot of possible nuisance conflicts with our GR zoning district. So wanted to see if there was a willingness on the board to advance the modification. It's a real-time opportunity for space that currently has a vacancy along South Dixie Highway. We can specify the locations, Mr. City Attorney, if you have it. I don't have it hand. I don't recall the address offhand, but it's the shopping center just south of Chipotle. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Yes, Commissioner Liebman, moving left to right.
Sorry, more of a,
Yeah.
of a comment. When you look at the architecture of that building, and for some people, frame of reference is better when you have a landmark or a name. The name of it was Florida Appliance Builders or Florida Builders Appliances, something similar. I'd be concerned if this was going to be in a mall, because this consumes a lot of parking and could detract from parking from some of the other establishments. But this is a standalone building, and if you look at the architecture of it, it looks like it was designed for that use. Glad we have a land use attorney in the office, on the dais with the mayor, who thinks about things such as ambulances and the noise, and that could disturb the residential area. But in addition, my biggest concern would be, even as an unoccupied site or empty storefront, though it's nothing anyone wants to see, it still pays taxes. So my greatest concern would be that that would then potentially would not pay taxes. So as long as the properties, and we can legislate this, leased and not sold, it would still pay taxes, and that would alleviate my concern.
Yep, my understanding of the transaction is that the property would remain in private ownership, and that the user, which is a charitable entity, would be leasing it. So again, I don't want to play the role of tax lawyer here, but my understanding is that it would remain a taxable property. Madam Vice Mayor? Yep.
Mine was along the same concern, where I don't want another piece of property to become non-taxable. And I would wonder why it is, if they have buildings already, they have the hospital across the street, then they have the other area across the street, and they have 2 empty lots. I just wonder why they wouldn't want to take advantage of any of the space that they have.
So my understanding of this particular opportunity is that there's a project on the site where they currently have a urgent care center that apparently is very well used. I know certainly my family's used it on a number of occasions. Just further up the road, in the city of Coral Gables, and that mall is proposed to be redeveloped. And so they're looking for, and they're going to be displaced. And so they're looking for a long-term leasehold, and this was an option that they identified because they didn't think that they could either co-locate or accommodate this use within their existing service footprint. So basically, they're looking at moving from basically the same sub-market within one spot to the other.
Yeah, no, if there is no tax implication to that, I don't have an issue with it.
Okay. Further questions? So can I get a motion to, refer this item to the planning board for consideration?
Yes, direct us to prepare the ordinance and put it on a.
Okay, so the motion would be I'll move that we direct the city attorney to prepare a modification to the GR zoning district to allow for an urgent care center use, and ask that they place it on a future planning board agenda for discussion.
Through the mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
So can you walk me through the process, city attorney, and maybe from a planning perspective, how that works? So we're being very specific on which particular opportunity here to add to the list of, I'm assuming, different possibilities of usage models. Is that what we're doing here?
So the hospital has proposed like a draft ordinance, okay? And what they've proposed is to allow it within the GR General Retail District, because that's what that district is. So it would be a new use being added.
Just a new use?
A new use being added to it.
To the list of uses that we already have?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then with a definition, so that we can restrict things like ambulances and noise and those kinds of things.
So in the process, I'm sorry, I want to understand this and learn.
I'm happy to allow the colloquy. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know it, I don't know it yet. I wanted to understand it. Does this go as a variance as well? Does it go through the process of a variance, or is this?
No, this would be.
This is just something that we put in place, planning takes a recommendation, approves it not.
Commissioner, would it be a text amendment to the code presented to the planning board for adoption?
Okay.
That would come back to us
And then we'll go
for
back.
final
to-
action.
Now I understand.
Yeah,
that.
no
First
problem.
and second reading. Mm-hmm.
Good question.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Is there going to be anything in that verbiage that states that it has to it remain a taxable property?
The short answer is probably not, because I really don't know how to write that in there. That would make sense and be enforceable.
Can I ask the question a slightly different way?
Yeah.
Just to see if I can address the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Liebman's question. Would the authorization of the use, when they come forward to permit it, require a development agreement?
We could require that. It wouldn't have to, but we could require that.
Okay, so if that's something the board wants to consider, would be one way to help address the concern. Okay. Okay, so I have no objection to that modification in terms of the direction of staff. Okay. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, so I have I've moved the item.
I'll
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by myself, a second by the Vice Mayor. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez,
Yes.
passed on to another meeting.
Thank you. With the board's concurrence, I'm going to move on from board and committee reports. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda? Are there any items you'd like to pull for discussion before I? No? And can I get a motion, well, Madam Clerk, if you can read items 1 through 4, please.
Yes. A resolution of the mayor and the city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, approving the purchase of indoor gymnasium refinishing improvements for the basketball gymnasium floor at the Gibson Bethel Community Center from Trident Surfacing, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $32,000, utilizing the terms and conditions of the competitively bid Sourcewell contract number 031022-GER, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with the contractor relating to the same. Item 2, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving the purchase of football game uniforms from VS Sports LLC for the South Miami Gray Ghost program in the amount of $15,500. Item 3, a resolution of the mayor and the City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving a proposal and project agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates to provide design services for the replacement of the existing culvert over Broad Canal at Southwest 58th Street between 63rd Court and 57th Drive in an amount not to exceed $89,195.60. Item 4, a resolution of the mayor and the city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a multi-year agreement with Passport Labs, Inc. for mobile parking payment systems, utilizing the terms and conditions, a contract competitively awarded through Omnia Partners, a purchasing cooperative.
Thank you. Is there a motion on items 1 through 4?
I propose we move them.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor, a second by Commissioner Corey. Again, this is consent items. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes. Madam Clerk, if you
Consent
can,
agenda passes.
thank you. If you can read item 6, please.
An ordinance of the mayor and city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, amending section 20-4.10 garage sale of the City Land Development Code to modify garage sale permit application procedures.
I move the item.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Liebman, a second by the Vice Mayor. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, or do you
I'll
want
say,
to?
when I saw this item on the agenda, at first when I saw the title, I got nervous, because I have trauma from this item.
PTSD for
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman on this
Luckily,
one.
it's just procedural, just has to deal with the application process. But for once, the 5 out of 5 worked to my advantage previously because I was able to block
Congratulations.
unlimited garage sales
Congratulations.
previously.
Thank you. PTSD. We have a motion and a
So-
second. Let's call the roll.
Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passes.
You can read item 7, please.
An ordinance of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, amending Section 2-3, compensation for commissioners and mayor established of Article 1 in general of Chapter 2, Administration and City Government of the City Code of Ordinances to provide for health insurance benefits for commissioners and dependent family members.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Kai, I believe you're the sponsor of this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As as we've gone through, maybe almost 2 years of being on the commission, more the newer ones, I've noticed that, and I've gotten to realize that the benefits that we get as commissioners, compensation-wise or benefits, is not much, and we don't really ask for much. But I did realize that I thought it was really, really unfair that some of the people on the commission, they depend on this particular benefit of insurance or whatnot, and it wasn't covered. And we were using our benefits, our compensation to cover that, and I just didn't think that it's fair. I don't ask for too much from a benefits perspective. So the idea here was that, that the city would cover the benefits of our families. And I'll leave it like that. I don't know if there's anything to add there, City Manager. Is there anything else that we should add there?
Commissioner, there was maybe just for further clarity that, and I believe it's your intent, that if a member of the commission under this legislation would opt out of the family, there would not be a stipend in that scenario. The stipend would only remain as is currently applied. If it's employee only, that's the stipend they receive. But if they opt out on family, they would not receive a stipend, and I believe that's your intent.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the city attorney has drafted some language to that effect.
And I'll just pass it to you. This is some alternative language that addresses exactly that issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further questions?
Sure.
Commissioner Liebman, you're recognized.
So, yeah, for the sake around numbers, so as a commission previously, we used to receive $1,000 a month. And we had a member in the commission, the commission discussed increasing the salary. Former mayor came out and said, well, that's not fair. When I was a commissioner, we only received maybe the same amount of $1,000. And I said, well, Mayor, when you were in the commission, did your house cost the same? And they said, no. Good point. What the commission decided to do, there was a commissioner who was active in a labor union, and they thought that health benefits should be available to the commission. So for the sake of round numbers, and you guys can correct me, and Mayor, I'm going to include you in this as if all the compensation's equal, because essentially it is. We receive about $1,000 a month for all the hard work and heartache we have to deal with. And then additionally, we receive health insurance valued at approximately $750. I think it's specifically $736, going to round up to $750. We also have the option of including our family in that, which I believe in and of itself, even though you're paying to include your family, which is approximately another $750 to include your whole family, I believe that is a benefit in and of itself, because you have health insurance provided to you and you're able to include your family. So that's number one. Number two is, one thing that the commission did previously is you had 3 options with the health insurance. You could take the health insurance, you could waive the health insurance, you could take the health insurance, 1, 2, you could take compensation in lieu of the health insurance, or 3, you could waive both. Believe it or not, one commissioner was taking cash in lieu of the health insurance, criticized me for taking the insurance, which, believe it or not, I did not respond to, but I still don't understand. But I don't fault anyone for, yes, it's on the record, but and had I not been.
Your silence is on the record.
Yes, had I not been receiving benefits, I mean, part of health insurance, they wouldn't have been able to take the cash. But all to say, I don't fault anyone for taking cash in lieu of health insurance because they may prefer to be on their spouse's policy. So that $750 acts as, or $736, whatever that number is, acts as subsidy, assuming you may want to be on your spouse's family plan. So, one, I believe it's already a benefit. Two, what this doesn't, this amendment is not consistent with what's already in place, which is that you can take out cash in, in lieu of the payment. So it's not really consistent for the bonus. And then the third thing is, it doesn't treat everyone equally, and that's what we're about, is equal treatment. And this is not about me. Nothing's about a name or face. It's about the seed and policy, and this won't go into effect until after I'm here, or pardon me, after I'm gone. But this only benefits people with families, so it does not treat everyone equally. So those are my three concerns. Number one, it's already a benefit to be able to add your family to the policy. Number two, it's not consistent with the plan that's already in place, which is you could take cash out. It's not about the cash. Again, you can subsidize a spouse's policy. And then third, it doesn't treat everyone equally.
Further comments or questions? So first off, I want to say I'm very grateful for the coverage we do receive, whether I pay for my family or not, and frankly, never more grateful than last year, frankly, to have the opportunity to access the healthcare. So I appreciate the sentiment behind the idea. My biggest concern is I don't understand the timing of when this would go into effect, and I certainly would not want to take the benefit of this compensation or benefit, however we want to style it, until after the voters had the opportunity to pass judgment on my ability to retain the seat. So I think if I've learned anything from watching some other jurisdictions in recent months that I will not name on the record around these conversations is I certainly do not want to have anyone characterize any action all of us are taking, which I think is all very well intentioned and beyond just the concern for people in the immediate seats. I don't want to be seen as, voting in my own interest here. So I wanted to ask the sponsor or city attorney, what is the effective date of this modification? Would this go into effect immediately?
Next election.
Or would it go into effect after the next election?
So the benefit would go into effect after the next election, according to your charter.
Okay, great. And then Commissioner Liebman, my question to you is, I appreciate your comment around treating people, with parity. Some of us choose to have families, some of us do not. In your mind, because you are the one person who does not have a family, and again, it's not. I'm asking you.
It's not about me.
I know, and I'm not trying to make it about you or me. But I want to ask you a question. What do you think would be equitable with respect to that issue?
The way there could also be someone who's divorced. There could be someone
Correct.
who's elderly,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And we should treat everybody equally. It's not equitable.
So
and then also it's not equitable, and it's not consistent with the previous item. It makes sense. So with the first 750, you can take the cash out, but now with the next 750, we have people in this dais whose spouse, right, worked at Baptist or at state attorney's office, they may have better coverage.
Correct. Yep.
Why can't that money be used as a subsidy? They still have a family.
Yep.
Again, it's not important to name names or seats, but plenty of people have spouses who have coverage. So that money could be used to subsidize it. So if there's already a plan in place for the first 50%, assuming this is going to pass, why wouldn't the second 50% be consistent with that? Right? And let's treat everybody equally. And then again, let's make this very clear. Just the fact that you can add your family onto the policy is a benefit.
Yep, it is. So again, I asked the questions again. I think it's very important, whatever we do on these issues, that we act with one voice. Again, we've seen examples elsewhere with these issues around compensation are characterized as self-serving, et cetera. So Commissioner Liebman, would you support, I'm gleaning from your comments, you would not support this current proposal. But if the second half of the benefit was payable to a commissioner as a cash contribution, would that render it equitable from your perspective? Or do you just want to take the position that it should not be extended to at all.
Maybe we should just clean it, I mean, just my opinion, you don't need my vote. I would just address my concerns, clean it up, and bring it back, or
Through the
just,
Yes,
or
sir.
just vote on the salary altogether. But either way, I mean, you're asking me for my opinion, this is not about,
No, I'm asking,
Yeah, but me.
again, I'm, what I would like is a consensus vote here if we're going to have a vote at all, frankly. So,
Yeah.
so.
And actually, what I think this does, and I want to commend Commissioner Kaye for it, and Commissioner Liebman as well, is we want a lot of diversity on the board, diversity of opinion. We want people who have large families, small families, older, younger. So I do think that Commissioner Liebman's feedback, Commissioner Kaye's proposal, it's all good things. So I think if we can clean it up and bring it back and speak as one, I think that'd be great.
Through the mayor.
yes, sir.
What is the proposal to clean it up? What is it that we're requesting here? Is it requesting to double the family as a stipend?
That's what I was trying to understand.
I know, I wasn't
So,
clear on what.
Yeah, that's,
How do we clean this up?
I don't know how you could have been more clear, just consistent with the item with the ordinance that's already in place.
So you're saying making the full amount of the premium, whether it's for an individual or family, reimbursable as a
Again,
as a cash contribution.
Just treat everybody equally.
I-
Why is it fair if someone has a family and they're on their spouse's health insurance, and that they, in lieu of the health insurance, they take the cash payment to subsidize their spouse's contribution to a family plan?
Commissioner Lehman, I think no one's trying to argue the point. I think you made an excellent point. I think we're trying to understand how we
No,
would.
but
how we
Mayor,
would-
I was just said that people didn't understand what I said, so I was asked to clarify it.
No, so again, but I just want to
You
make
may have
sure.
understood, but I was asked to clarify it.
What if,
Okay.
can I offer an idea?
Yes, please, go ahead,
What
sir.
if we maximize the benefits so that we can standardize what people get paid if they don't have a family put on it?
So I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Lehman say is that he thinks we should have a set cash reimbursement, if you choose to opt out. Okay, whether you have a family, you're an individual, or because you have coverage elsewhere. Am I understanding that
Just make
correctly?
it consistent with what's in place, or someone can waive it altogether.
Correct.
You don't have to take the health insurance, you don't have to take the cash in lieu of it. And I don't know, it's personal, it's private.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's HIPAA, I don't know, but I believe we did have one commissioner who, and I could be wrong, but just waived it altogether.
Okay. So to the sponsor, or do you have some clarity? No. What I would, in the hope of addressing and then moving this on so we can get to it, I don't think we'd spend this much time on this item. But what I would suggest is a modification, Mr. City Attorney, that would basically provide for the payment of a lump sum benefit in terms of cash, or the ability to waive the receipt of the benefit altogether, in addition to what's reduced to writing here in lines 81 through 84. And we would be striking current lines 82 through, beginning at any member, and then lines 83 and 84. Because I believe that's the language that creates the disparity that Commissioner Liebman was addressing. Commissioner Liebman, is that correct?
Mayor, if I,
Be closer.
just shed some
I
light
want to
on-
be conscious of the time. Why don't we do this? I would like to move to table the item and bring it back at the next meeting. So the city attorney has some chance to review the language, we can get some clarity in individual one-on-one conversations with the manager and the city attorney, and we can look at one proposal, one time, with fresh eyes and some common understanding. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table the item. Is there a date we want to bring this back on?
Next meeting.
Okay, so we'll bring it back on the next meeting. Without objection, we'll consider the item tabled. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, if we can read item 8, please.
Microphone.
Sorry. An ordinance of the mayor and the city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, amending Article 3 zoning regulations, Section 23-3.6, supplemental regulations of the Land Development Code relating to boat storage in single-family residence properties.
Thank you for that. So we're very quickly, as a sponsor of this item, Commissioner Lehman has done a yeoman's job trying to address and bring us into conformity with what is the practice everywhere else in Dade County in terms of boat storage. Over the course of the consideration of the last item, I came across a couple examples, actually, when I was canvassing for our ballot referendum, of individuals who shared with me that they were in agreement with the policy, but had intended to buy a boat immediately because they had older, what do you call the core of a boat? I guess shells, or I don't know. Anyhow, older boats that they were intending to replace in the very near future. So since I know the sponsor's intent was not to impair their rights, what I thought was we would basically allow us to grandfather those folks who registered. I think the draft that's in front of us allows them to be registered for, or grandfathered for the period of time that they remain in ownership of both, or the title of the boat remains in the title of the name of the owner of the home. Correct. Okay? That's what's in front of us by virtue of this first reading item. If there are any modifications to that proposed revision, I'm certainly happy to entertain them. Madam Vice Mayor, you have a question?
I actually have two questions and then a comment. I had asked the city manager how many permits we had currently in a house that had a boat on them. Because in my mind, this has for whatever reason taken on a life of its own. Some of us have gotten insulted, other ones have been, I mean, it's in my opinion been a little ridiculous. So if we have 4,000 properties, how many boats do we have registered?
To date, we have 50 boats that have registered. As I mentioned, I'm not sure how many boats are out there, but there's 50 that have registered as a result of this program.
And Madam Vice Mayor, I heard from, I would say, a total of 4 people that were concerned about the policy. Once it was explained to them what we were actually doing, because there was a whole lot of confusion about what the effect of the last modification was. I can honestly tell you maybe 4 people that I came across who said to me, look, I got an older boat, and I was planning on buying a new one this year, and I still want to store it here. It's going to be smaller than the one I have. I just want a chance to replace it. So whether we allow it, that person to do that for the balance of the time they own the home and the boat in their name, or we want to do it one more time, I'm certainly open to have that conversation. This just allows us to grandfather those folks and be done with the issue, hopefully, once and for all, and avoid any further recrimination.
And something that I think that we should look at adding here is, I'm remiss because I can't remember the house that I drove by. It's in my neighborhood. On the same street, a house that has a boat that has landscaping around it. It actually looks quite nice. You don't pay attention to the boat because the way they're storing the boat is actually very nice. And then there's another house where the boat is, just an eyesore. And so if we want to move forward with this, I think we should consider having something like, right now we have it has to be next to a hedge or something. There has to be a hedge between your house and the other house, but there might be something that we want to add so that, right now we're just obscuring it from their neighbor on the side of the boat, but not obscuring it from anybody else who's driving down the street, walking down the street, their neighbor on the other side. So knowing how difficult it is to maneuver a boat, I wonder if we have something that we can do, and I'm not a landscape architect, I'm not even going to pretend, but to make where that boat is more attractive, because some of these boats are nasty. Like, they're just not nice. And for your neighbor to have to look at that every single day, I wouldn't like it.
Understood, and I think to the extent that you have an example, you want to try to work a modification, I'm open to it. So, thank you.
I'll be driving aimlessly looking for this house now. People who own the boat that has the landscaping and the todo, shout out to us.
Further questions or comments?
Sure, I have some comments.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, for indulging me.
Yeah.
So we're wanting to clear the record, not the city record, but amount of grief I've had to deal with and just slander, it's just honestly unconscionable. So first I'll start with just the facts. This was never, ever an anti-boat ordinance. We were the only city in the county, out of 34 municipalities that didn't even have a boat ordinance. That's why we're elected, to create policy. The former mayors say, which I completely disagreed with, is a quote, there shouldn't be a limit to the number of boats you can keep in your front yard. Well, I categorically disagree with that. And what this ordinance did originally was it simply adopted the most lax boat ordinance in the county, which is the county. That's, when I live in a city, people traditionally live in cities for more enforcement. So we simply adopted the county ordinance, which said the boat has to be beyond the frontmost wall. In addition, I thought of all the neighbors. If you currently had a boat in front of your house, all you had to do is register for free, and you could keep it there. It's never been any secret. I ran for office. Every vote I've cast up here, and I stand on all my votes. I've always tried to raise the bar in this city. And look at the city when I was first elected, and look at the city now. There's a reason why I have 100 municipalities. There's an article in the Herald about this. South Miami appreciated more than any other municipality in the Tri-County area. People do love their boats in South Florida. Boat storage becoming more expensive and harder to come by, but that said, there's values, property values, there's noise, absolute noise pollution, environmental pollution, and boats very large, loud colors, on trailers, T-tops, outriggers. It's not as simple as a boat. We allowed boats to be parked anywhere in the front yard, but yet you couldn't even put up a hedge. That never made sense to me. You could park a boat parallel to your house in the street, but you couldn't even put up a hedge because the hedge would block visibility. But what about the boat, right? That's a public safety concern. The boat did not have to be seaworthy. The boat only needed to have a current license plate and air in the tires. A dear friend and mentor lived a few houses down. They've since moved to South Carolina. You know, their daughter studied was an urban planner, and they were an urban planner. It's a very large firm, and if I didn't hear bane of my existence every day from my neighbor about a boat that was growing, about a tree that was growing out of a boat of another neighbor's house, I didn't hear it once. So, in sort of segue here, a couple things that I believe, other than being able to speak straight and regardless of the consequences, always take the hard vote, is I grew up in two different households, divorced parents. In one house directly across from Baptist, and the other one down Red Road in the Gables. One house had sidewalks, street lights. There were no boats on the street, but you could have a boat if you wanted to. And then I grew up in the Gables, where you have a tree canopy. You didn't have standing street signs. Streets aren't numbered. You have to know the streets. They're on the curb. There were no boats allowed and no street lights. And there's, in my mind, and I've no secret, since first elected, always strive to be make this city more like the Gables. One was absolutely more appealing, even though I didn't agree with the pickup component of that. So, again, people have said the worst things imaginable in my street, which is a shame, because I don't believe anyone's ever done more in this city, and I stand by that, and I could tell you all the things I've done. And I absolutely showed bias, favorability to East US 1, because of the first person elect East US 1 in 22 years, and this is where the majority of taxes come from. So the fact that I've received nothing but just slander from my neighbors, and people, instead of asking the question, prefer to make the accusation. So I absolutely take issue with that. And everyone, including my dear friend, who I have tremendous respect for and appreciation, our mayor, says, we signed up for this. We absolutely did not sign up to be slandered. We signed up to serve the public, which we all do, and I still believe I was doing with this ordinance. So I never signed up to be slandered. It's gone so far that a neighbor by the name of Raul Cern can't believe he's in the financial services, the fiduciary responsibility, committed a criminal act. He lied. He filed a false police complaint just simply because he didn't like the ordinance. He happens to have a boat, but rarely keeps it in front of his house, could if he wanted to. Went to the police department and said that I threatened him. Call was all of 21 seconds. As three witnesses that are around me, even started to doubt myself. I mean, that's how much trauma you have to deal with here. Did I say something? And all three witnesses corroborated I never say anything about it. But that police report's on the record simply because that nasty, lying neighbor, again, I can't believe his fiduciary responsibility and people trust this person with retirement, didn't like the ordinance, even though it doesn't adversely impact them. So I just have, I have serious issues with the way that the people have done nothing but serve responded to this. And no one's even had the courtesy of speaking to me about it. So in terms of the policy, I have no issue. I just have tremendous issue with people that we want to call our neighbors in the city of the pleasant living that have done nothing but serve. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to move this item. Is there a second?
Second.
So a motion by the mayor, second by Commissioner Kaye. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll on item 8, please.
Yes. Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman? Vice Mayor Bonich?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Item passes 5-0.
Okay, so we have 2 items left. Do we want to address the RFP or the add-on? Let's do the RFP. So Madam Clerk, if you can read item 5, please.
What's the add-on?
A resolution of the mayor and city commission of the city of South Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to issue a request for proposals, RFP, for the South Miami City Hall redevelopment project to the respondents selected pursuant to request for qualifications number CSM 2024-01.
Thank you. Mr. Manager or Mr. Attorney, anybody want to provide some sort of background introduction on this item, or?
Sure, Mayor. So what you have before you is the draft RFP. Essentially what it's looking for, it incorporated all of your comments as to what we believe it incorporated all of your comments. We may have some more comments to walk through. There are a few open items to address, but essentially it sets forth 2 types of development that would go on the City Hall property, generally speaking. Or alternative locations with the permission of the city. There are private development parcels, and then there are civic parcels or civic portions of the development. The civic portions would include a city hall, a police station, the library, and Gene Willis Park in its current incarnation or in a relocated, renewed incarnation on the City Hall property. There's a discussion as to what the requirements of the RFP would be, and then there's the weighted scale for evaluating these things. The process that has been set up has an evaluation committee evaluating and actually scoring the proposals. Those scores would go to the city manager, who would then make his own recommendation and include those scores in his recommendation to the city commission. City commission would then determine what project, what proposal is in the best interests of the city. If you look at the scoring on, let's see, the scoring breakdown is heavily weighted towards the actual development plan. Out of 500 points, it's half of the points have to do with the development plan. Another 100 points, or about 20% of the total, is the financial offer. And then there's some points for the project schedule and the finance plan. So we tried to address as many of the aspects of this. We consulted with your special counsel for this, Manny Fernandez and Albert Delgado, who provided ample comments, and what you have before you includes a lot of their comments. But it is still open-ended to try to elicit a variety of responses, to see what the market can come up with, in terms of what is the best proposal, both from a development standpoint and from a financial standpoint for the city. And we've stated here that the goal is to develop the civic portions of the development at no cost to the city, if that is possible. So that's the stated primary goal. I could answer any questions you like, or I can direct your attention to the open items. Would that help? All right. So let's see. Yep.
Mr. City Attorney, before we go to the open items, I was going to ask my apologies. I think I'm getting a little bit of a cold and my voice is going. I wanted to ask my colleagues, are there any items that you wanted to address quickly, so we just keep a list? And maybe address those that way? I have, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have about 9 items that I have on my list that I have questions about. Some of them are open items, so again, I don't want to scare our city attorney too badly with those, but are there any items you want to I'll quickly call out that are items you want to make a focal point of the conversation this evening?
Mayor, just was going to ask you if you want to take a quick break, because I hear your voice also before you get in.
I'll be fine, yeah. I'd rather wrap up sooner rather than later, but thank you for that. Any items we want to add to the list? I'm going to quickly run through mine, and maybe that'll help frame the conversation. Number one is our preferences as to the location of the civic improvements. I don't think that's addressed in the RFP expressly. Number two is we have an open question about about allowing people to, present an alternative zoning envelope. So the zoning envelope seems a little bit flexible in terms of how we are presenting it here. I believed in a prior conversation we had expressed a desire to have a minimum requirement around workforce housing. I did not see that reflected in the solicitation document. With respect to Gene Willis Park, this requires the replacement, or if you're going to move it, but it does not express a preference as to where we would like it located. So that was another comment. We have minimum parking standards for the civic improvements, both for our components and the library components. Again, I would rather make those aspirational goals as opposed to hard minimums, particularly as it relates to the library, where we have no contractual obligation, just a request to ask. I just some comments on the scoring allocation. We have 2 open items related to the minimum percentage rent, the annual escalators, and then the multi-year escalators, and so I had some questions about the interplay of those 3 items. So that's maybe one comment. And then we are requesting financial statements. At this point, I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that would be attractive to respondents. And so maybe it's requesting that before we enter into negotiations with a selected respondent, we require that they provide us with their financial statements so they confirm they have the wherewithal to do the project, as opposed to asking everyone to provide financials, detailed financials at this stage where we're still at the RFP level. That was my list of issues. I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything to that list. Madam Vice Mayor.
I'm interested in, now that you've said yours, and hearing what the open items are, because maybe they marry,
Yeah.
and it's easier then for us to have a conversation.
Sure. The open items as I had them were the consideration questions about minimum percentage rent and the escalators. There's a schedule, I think, also a schedule that's open, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? Mr. City Attorney, what else was I missing in terms of open issues?
The amount of cost recovery was another one, both at this time and at the time of award. There was the scoring itself. Essentially, what is the value of the oral presentation? It may be that 200 points out of a total of at that point 700 points. That may be too weighted towards the oral presentation. But that's a thought. But it was primarily the base rent and the escalators.
And with respect to the actual schedule for the discharge of the RFP, I mean, I think there's a schedule listed of key milestones, but we have no dates attended to those.
Correct.
I don't know if the manager or you have suggested dates that we would add, just so you could walk us through that schedule. That might be helpful as well.
Sure.
Okay. So those are the open items that the city attorney had. Colleagues, any other items we wanted? Commissioner Kaye.
Well, I just wanted to see, I don't want to make you repeat it, but the first 2 that you said that you had questions on?
So again, I have our preference with respect to the location of civic improvements. We've had a conversation before about wanting to keep City Hall, if we can, and the library on this campus as our preferred alternative. I don't think that was expressed directly in the solicitation. Again, we're allowing for it to be suggested to be placed elsewhere, but I thought we did want to send the market a signal that that was our express preference. The zoning envelope here makes reference to the study that we're doing, but I think it does allow people to go beyond that in terms of what they want to present. If I'm reading it wrong, please correct me, sir.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, my concern about that is that it's going to make it very difficult to then compare financial proposals because there will be differences in terms of permitted program that could vary not insubstantially. So that was my concern about not setting an envelope and committing to something. We can always, once we pick a respondent, we could always certainly liberalize that further, but my concern was in the comparison. That might get tricky. I also had a prior discussion about I think it was Mr. Milo who mentioned at the last public hearing on this item that, we should have a minimum workforce housing requirement. I thought we had provided some direction on that front. I may be mistaken. Gene Willis Park, minimum parking on civic improvements. I had scoring, which the city attorney mentioned, and again, the financial terms and financial statements. That was my list.
I didn't make you repeat all of them. I just wanted the first two, but
It's fine. I just, what the heck?
He just went for broke.
Go for broke. I got a list here. Gene Willis Park.
He's just gonna go down over
Just
and
gonna
over.
go down the list. Okay, any other items we want to add to the conversation? Commissioner Liebman?
Just in terms of the weighting.
Okay. So anything new, and then we'll take it in any order. We'll start with waiting. Madam Vice Mayor, any items that were not mentioned that you want to address?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we in any way looking at the possibilities of people partnering in this endeavor? Like, we've got Related Urban that is great with workforce housing. We've got other people that are also also part of this that are good in
So
regular housing.
I think to the city attorney, trying to take your question, we have 5 firms that we have allowed into this next phase. There's nothing in the solicitation that would preclude any of those 5 firms from deciding to submit a joint RFP response.
So there is.
Is that
a
your question, Madam
provision-
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is a provision regarding collusion, but.
Collusion would be working
Correct.
independently towards driving
Towards
a
one
point.
result,
But if they
correct.
decided to join forces,
Yeah,
there's no prohibition on that. Okay?
there's no prohibition on that?
no.
No. There is a
Hang on.
prohibition, or
The
there's
city
not?
attorney said any proposal, not if they,
I'm confused.
I believe the mayor's talking about the submitting a.
So the
joint
existing
proposal.
5 are in the process. If let's just pick,
Or-
Sun and Blink Development wanted to team up with Related, just picking up random names, right? And that was something, they came in with a joint proposal responsive to the RFP in all respects. Could they submit jointly? I think was the Vice Mayor's question.
Yeah, to the extent that they can, if it's the will of the commission to allow for that, then we would tweak it
Okay,
to make that clear
okay.
that
So
can happen.
more tweaks required for that is what I'm taking away. Further items. Commissioner Corey, excuse me?
I think everything was addressed. I did have a concern just based on something we've done recently, which was say that the Silva Martin building could be moved, that the most obvious location that it would be moved would be the relocated Gene Willis Park site. And if that were to occur, if everyone would be okay with us losing that green space if they did that. I was just going to talk about that as a discussion item, but I don't know if that's so.
I'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
No harm in doing that. Okay. Commissioner Kaya, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, everything's been
Okay.
spoken about that I had all my points on,
Okay.
as you can see with the blue.
Okay. Commissioner Liebman, I saw you move your microphone and then retreat. Anything you wanted to add? Okay. I'm going to consider the list of items closed, if that's okay. Let's start with scoring. Commissioner Liebman, why don't you get your comments on the record regarding the scoring?
You just personally, I'm sure, consulted with a number of our outside advisors, work with a firm that's done a number of, there's only so many of these, but a lot more experience. Our legal team has a lot more experience. But to me, weighting the deal at 20% just doesn't sound rich enough for me. Now, I'm okay if we want to leave it. It'll all balance
No,
out
I
in the
agree.
end.
I
Okay.
agree. I think weighting it at just 100 points, frankly, is too light, particularly if we add in the 200 points on the oral presentation. So I mean, I think, I think we've got maybe a little bit too much right now on too many points on the master development plan and architectural approach. That's certainly important to me. But I probably would sacrifice a few points there to increase the financial offers weighting. So I concur. Any thoughts on that topic, colleagues?
Where do we get this point system to start with? And
It's
To start.
just our team's best effort at
Yeah.
coming up with something
Best
for us to,
effort?
yeah.
Not something that we,
No, there was
From
no
anywhere
input
else?
on that. We just put something together to prompt this discussion.
okay, got it.
So, I mean, I would suggest, Commissioner Liebman, if you concur, maybe reducing the master development plan to 200 points and maybe conferring another 50 points to the financial offer section, just to kind of balance it out a little bit further.
See, this is for the weighting, and ultimately it'll be our vote. But
Correct.
Based on my vote personally,
Yeah.
it'll be a lot more than 20% into the financial terms.
Okay, what
deal.
would your suggestion be?
Well, with everything we want to do and retain our great staff and so forth, I'm going to place the greatest emphasis on the financial deal.
Okay, but is that 50, is that 250 points out of 500? Is it 300? I mean, we just need to, a target
Yeah,
here.
I'm much higher than the rest of the commissions, whoever the rest of the commission would like to settle. Because obviously, I want a quality product, be concerned, as you mentioned, about height and density, but yeah, that's of greatest concern to me, right? We need new facilities, beautify the city, put it on the tax rolls,
Okay.
but,
Would we want to switch them?
yeah. And we need this to pay for our new city hall and
So
police
let me
station as
just
well.
ask if I can, a point of clarification to the city attorney. In this scheme, is the financial offer a total of 100? So the overall finance plan is another 50 points? So
Yes.
in aggregate, the financial elements are 150 points?
Correct.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
Mayor, if I
Yes,
could share
please.
something on that,
Yeah.
and I kind of share Commissioner Lehman's thought process. I would just say it's a matter of degrees. I would be careful of the unintended consequence, because obviously there could be sacrifices to the proposal, to the project, which then allows for a richer financial proposal, right? But then the project itself is sacrificed. So, it's a matter of degrees. Obviously, we're trying to maximize the value that we extract from this site, but you don't want the project itself to be sacrificed to a certain degree. So I just throw that out, so when you're considering what the ratio should be out of the total points, that there's a little bit of balance here.
Can I ask, in terms of qualitative, from a qualitative perspective, how are we going to evaluate the financing and budgeting approach as described here at 40 points? I mean, to our team, what would be like objective criteria that we would use to evaluate what those words mean? Is there a preference for them paying out of cash, right, or conventional debt, or are they relying on? I mean, do you understand where I'm going? Which is what are we trying to tease out with that language in terms of what it means?
My interpretation, sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
My interpretation was what the financial benefit and how they would go ahead paying it. So would they have an offer for rent? If they have an offer for net term 20 years, repeatable for the next 4, and then.
But that's I guess that's the financial offer, right?
Well,
So I
there's
would-
2 parts of the financial offer, right? There's the upfront cost.
The way I read this was, not to interrupt, I apologize, it was the financial offer was the actual consideration, right? Improvements
Correct.
and/or cash.
Correct.
Right? And what I read as the overall finance plan is their approach to underwriting the deal, right?
Correct.
Okay, so part of that is an evaluation of their strength and capacity, which we rated at 10 points here. The other part is how they would go about, I guess, putting together the capital stack for the project.
Yeah, Mayor, to answer your question, so the 2 components of this portion relate basically to feasibility of the project. Is this a legitimate proposal? That's what it's getting at, or is this pie in the sky? And we thought that would have an impact as to whether, if it's not really feasible, then that you should know that.
Okay, yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
Okay, so being real right now, I have an art and a marketing background. Are we purporting that I, as an individual, am supposed to know all of the things that are in here, or do we have a
No.
person?
So,
Because
yeah.
you just said something that set off a sparkler in my head, which is like, yeah, they have a pie in the sky idea. I mean, wouldn't somebody, I don't know if it's you guys or some other person that I don't personally know right now, is gonna come here and say, hey, that's never gonna work.
So Madam Vice Mayor, just to help with that, I think this is the criteria we're going to approve that the evaluation committee is going to take, right, and apply to their review of the responses, right? So I think the concern about pie in the sky offers is in the section about financial offer, they could promise you $80 million, right, of total consideration, improvements in cash, but there's really no evidence that they could execute. And the evidence of the execution, as I'm reading this, would be in the overall finance plan section, right? Which is, here's what we've done to finance similar projects. Here's our typical mix of debt, equity, alternative financing. Here's what we think the market looks like today or for the next few years, right? There's some again, I'm asking as much as I'm saying, is that what we're going to be evaluating in that section? Because that's how I'm understanding. Is that clear
And
issue
then I
for
have
you?
one more part of that.
Please, go ahead.
Which is, who are these scorers going to be?
So, Mr. Manager, could
So-
you
yeah.
elaborate on the scoring committee?
First, on the technical side, I also want to remind that obviously we've enhanced the team by the outside counsel, and then PFM, Public Financial Management, provide that technical support.
That's Masvidal.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and help provide that analysis of the financial structure, and is it, is it to market, is it realistic, is it doable?
And I'm assuming our appraiser would be part of that assessment team as well.
Correct,
Okay.
and anywhere we need that. So they would help inform, and then there will be a committee, yet to be named, individuals that would sit in this committee that would benefit from this technical support and this information, so they can make, their decisions in scoring based on the technical assessment of these outside, your internal team and your external team.
We're not gonna have like 17,000 people on this committee that we're talking about outside of the
No,
people that we're paying for their
16,999.
expertise. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because and maybe I'm looking at this very simplistically, but I'm like, we're all professionals. I think most of us are pretty smart, but we're paying somebody for their expertise. And while
Yeah.
a committee is a nice thing to have for these three people so that they have somebody to bounce stuff off of and what have you, I really want whatever the feedback is going to be to really come from the people that I'm
Correct.
paying. My mechanic knows my car. The guy who works next door at the solar tinting place might know what my car looks like, but he can't fix my car.
Absolutely. I think Madam Vice Mayor, excuse me. The conversation we're having here is, this is really where we allocate points, is we as policymakers, where we're assigning priorities to how to give that committee directions to what we think they should evaluate and with what kind of weight.
Yeah.
So, yes, Commissioner
Can I go back
Corey.
to your original point? I think maybe Commissioner Lehman, if this sounds right to you, if we move 50 points from the master development plan, the overall financial picture from what the offer is to their capacity would be equal to that of the master plan. It'd be 200, 200,
200, 200, 100.
and then 100. Doesn't that sounds a little more balanced, right?
Okay, so I think we want to figure out how to reallocate the point total, and do we want to delegate that to staff, or we want to spell it out? I'm fine delegating it within the big numbers, so let's
Yeah.
set the master development plan number at 200.
Right.
Okay. Do we want to allocate 25 points to the financial offer and 25 more points to the finance plan?
I think it's semantics. I mean, it's the same overall. They're all financial.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we just consolidate that category and make it 200 points? It's the financial offer and the finance plan, so those things are weighted together at 200 points, and then leave the project schedule at 100. Obviously, we all have concerns about the timing of when things get built, because that speaks to the realness of the offer. So from a scoring perspective, consensus on that point? Okay, hearing no objections, staff has that direction. Okay, so we talked about scoring. What issues we want to take up next?
Do you want to go down your list?
I can do it on my list. Do we civic improvements? Again, yes, sir.
I could have missed it, but I just want to make sure, the oral, which has to do with points as well, should have that discussion now before you move on to this as part of scoring?
Yes, absolutely. So do we want to weight the oral presentation at 200 points or some other number?
Why wouldn't we make it 100?
I'm fine with making it 100.
Yeah, I just think why make it a bigger number just to make it?
I think giving it the same weight as the financial offer to me does not make a whole lot of sense. So I would be comfortable at 100. Any objections to reducing that to 100 points? Going once, going twice, hearing no objections, sold at 100 points, okay? Civic improvements. Had a lot of priority meetings. We talked about what our preferences were. I thought for those priority meetings, we had said, we'd like to try to retain the library and City Hall, at least the ceremonial City Hall. on this campus. If all the back of the house goes elsewhere, is that still our position, colleagues?
Yep.
If that is, can we add language that at least indicates to the respondents that that is our preference?
Preference.
Huh? The police, I thought we were fine with moving the police station off campus. Is that,
Wouldn't that be an either or?
so
Or-
I thought our express preference was, at the very least, we want to keep the library and a ceremonial city hall. Maybe one building on this campus, everything else could be moved to an alternate location. If I'm recalling it incorrectly, please correct me.
I think I agree with Commissioner Lieben.
Okay, so
where-
let's elaborate on that. Why don't I recognize Commissioner Kai and then Commissioner Lieben on this point?
Yeah, I think
Go
that
ahead.
either or would be preference. If we have a civic building that includes police, then that's fine. That's an option that we have, but we also have, we don't want to take the option away of putting it elsewhere. either.
No, to clarify what I'm saying, we're saying is our preference would be to have a civic building, it would have the library and the ceremonial components of this function on this campus. So our chambers, for example, and maybe a public meeting space that we would share with the library. Everything else, we are open to it being relocated elsewhere. Am I being clear? Madam Vice Mayor?
I think the police needs to stay wherever our general operations are, simply because if you sit in the assistant's office for our city manager, they're saying, oh, okay, no, you have to go to the police department for that background check. No, you can go to finance.
I think what I'm suggesting would not exclude that possibility. I agree with you. I think it'd be best if our general government and police operations were at least contiguous, right? They can't be integrated. All I'm saying is, at least as a minimum, to keep the civic function on Main and Main, the library and the ceremonial city hall could stay here now.
Which ones would be off campus? If it's not a preference,
I think it would be this.
maybe I think that's where I'm misunderstanding your statement, Mayor.
I think the general administration would be elsewhere, and in that scenario, if it was retained here, it would be the police station as well.
Yeah, I think the mayor's point is, do you signal stronger on chambers and library? Is it a requirement or,
I'm not
preferred?
saying it's a requirement,
Right.
but at least saying it's preferred.
And then
right?
the city hall operations and police could be here or could be somewhere else, right? I think you're
Building
allowing
department,
flexibility.
financial
Correct.
services,
Everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
Could
that
be
would-
elsewhere. I would be of the opinion that they stay together. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm sorry, did you say building department elsewhere?
Correct. No,
Well,
I didn't say elsewhere. I said together.
Yeah, together with city hall, because they would not necessarily be, it's a little more.
I want to
Yeah.
bifurcate the conversation this way for clarity.
All right.
I absolutely 100% agree that the management should be integrated in one facility, right? All I'm suggesting is that for purposes of holding public meetings, we would have a space on this campus with a library. Maybe we have a working office or a couple offices for all of us, and the manager receive people on days that we're functioning out of this building. But in terms of the general operations and management, they would be moved in conjunction with all the departments and preferably be contiguous with the police department elsewhere. I think the purpose of that and what we had discussed before was trying to unlock the most value from this site, given that it's very well situated across from transit, and there might be alternate sites where we could locate those operational functions elsewhere and not detract from retaining a civic presence, at least here on our main street, which is Sunset Drive.
So,
Commissioner
Mayor,
Lieben?
sorry. I should provide a little context. So it was originally the Champion, the police station there, Champion Brazy, the inspection station structure and so forth, and said the crime either occurs in that area or emanates from that area. Additionally, the police would have more accessibility, or because it's very difficult to enter and exit from Sunset Drive. But in speaking with you, Mayor, at the Sunshine meetings, you had preferred that, at the time, that the police station was here and was consolidated. So, right, here's all the things I'm factoring into this. Create more economies of scale, right? And that will generate more revenue for the city if we consolidate those operations. So there's consolidated operations, there's economies of scale in terms of the building. We can build the police station alongside with the city hall, but we're in the unique position to do that. If we locate the police station, the inspection station, that's it, it's standalone, you can't build on top of that. I was also doing that to work with the commission, accommodate some of the other commission's concerns. I know that some members of this commission, maybe the majority, would like to see a workforce housing product on that site, which is an excellent location for it. I've even suggested leasing that site or selling that site to generate revenue for whatever it is, placemaking, because we're not sure the bond will pass and so forth. So, yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages, but I think it's a net advantage to keep the police station on the City Hall site. And I'd argued against it originally because I thought it made for a more attractive site to keep it separate, and also the police, you know, given the choice, I believe they like to be somewhat independent. But you very partially convinced me. You did. I mean, now you're going the other way to keep everything consolidated, especially to create economies of scale in terms of operations and costs. So, but whatever the commission wants to do.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
again, just to understand, you're saying you would like to
I
keep
prefer.
the police station and our city operations on this campus? In
Yes.
total?
Yes.
In total?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm just one opinion.
No, understood. Just want to be clear. Okay, Madam Vice Mayor, thoughts?
Geez, okay. I find it odd that we would just have a ceremonial presence here, because in my mind, that just equals essentially a stage. This, for me, is a stage, right? We're broadcasting out to the world the decisions that we're making. Other than that, we're really not in this space. So we would be doing the stage and a meeting room that we would share with the library. So essentially 2 meeting rooms. And then everything else could be somewhere else. I just want whatever we do for the resident to have the ease of being able to walk from finance to building to the police without issue, because while everything that goes on here may be beautiful, it's not beautiful to me if I have to walk or drive to a different place.
So Madam Vice Mayor, I think my suggestion was that all those functions
Go in
be
another-
in one location.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
And we allow for the option of being located elsewhere. And that the only preference we would express would be to try to retain some civic aspect on this campus, because one, it's basic town planning. You always want to have your city hall and library on Main and Main. But we also want to unencumber as much as possible this real estate, which we think is valuable, by limiting the number of public uses on it. So again, we could leave the language as it is, if you think it's fine, or we could add that preference. I'm open to, it's not an issue I want to die on today.
No,
It's not-
and I'm fine with both, but if I were gonna choose, like for the chambers, why would, if we're fine with our business being somewhere else, then wouldn't we just want the library?
Okay, so.
here? That's
so-
all that I'm,
So your, just to be clear, do you want to leave the language as it's written currently in the proposal? Okay.
Maybe
You think about that. I'm going to go down this, so I'll come back to you, sir.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, any thoughts
Okay,
before? No?
think I understand.
Yeah, so I think that we've allocated 30,000 square feet to the City Hall building, which should contain at 30,000 square feet, not only our building department, our city financial services, and everything incumbent already. So I'm of the opinion that we should leave it as is. I'm more of a presence. It just complicates the aspect of looking for different facilities, different places. There's a lot of restrictions that we're going to be able to accompany here when we move forward and trying to find off-campus locations to fulfill these positions. So, I mean, these positions and you know, the assets and everything that goes into that. So I would probably leave it as is, Mayor, for that reason. Obviously not eliminating the possibility of doing that, but I would just leave it as is. 30,000 square feet is suffice square
So, I
foot
mean-
to do all that.
Mr. Guy, just on that point, I'm not saying the 30,000 square feet we're changing. I'm just saying that all 30,000 square feet don't have to be here.
I'm saying I would probably prefer it to be here.
All 30,000 square
All
feet?
30,000, yeah.
Okay.
That's my preference,
And
just my opinion.
Commissioner Lieben?
Sorry, and the reason I wanted to speak out of turn is I think I misunderstood you. Just wanted to correct myself.
Yeah.
You were not referring to a standalone police station. You were potentially referring to the City Hall, police station, all operations on the inspection site.
Correct.
Okay,
possibly.
sorry, I'm fine with
or
that.
some
I
other-
misunderstood.
Or some other location
Okay,
that someone
I
identifies.
stand corrected, I misunderstood.
The only thing I was suggesting that we express a preference for was keeping
Yes.
a limited
Okay, I
city presence.
retract what I
Okay.
said.
So we have, I think Commissioner Kaya on one side saying we want to send the message that we keep all 30,000 square feet here. Is that the consensus of the board, or do we want to just limit?
I think I'm fine.
Okay, right now, could you To the manager, yes, sir.
Yeah, it could, you know, I think the approach that you've taken to date has been to try and provide as blank of a canvas to let the creativity of the market come with ideas. And so you could signal a preference, but you give yourself some flexibility if it's, you know, not required. And there may be some creative, you know, options that come our way that we're not seeing the art of the possible now. So I think adding flexibility to that, whether it could be here or it could be off campus, gives you more options, right? Unless you feel really strongly about something. I mean, yes, I think there's synergy between a city hall and police headquarters being together. Vice Mayor, you've articulated to one simple scenario that happens
Every day.
50 times in a day when you sit in that conference room. But so maybe, you know, we're saying the same thing, but I think if you give yourself flexibility, we may get surprised by some ideas that you know, somebody may come forward and said, hey, we would do this in this manner. And it may be an off-campus idea, right? But we're not required to necessarily.
So the way, sorry, Mayor, through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
The way that we do that is we just leave it as is and let them give the ideas based on that, right? I mean, I don't really want to signal a preference one way or the other. I do have probably a preference myself, just because I'm imagining all the different things that are going to come behind that, but that's just my preference.
Yeah. I mean, one other, not to complicate it, but if you wanted to say this scenario, but if you have ideas, you know, almost like a separate category, because I think you alluded to the ability to compare apples to apples. When you have somebody that's saying everything's here and somebody splitting it, then, you know, it gets a little bit more complicated.
I don't, that wasn't my concern about the complications. At the end of the day, we're asking for a minimum amount of improvements, and as long as we get them, we can value them. My concern was on that stuff doesn't generate revenue. Like, this stuff generates costs, right? The zoning envelope allows people to generate revenue. And so if we don't define the zoning envelope, not to get off topic, right, we're gonna get, I think, a wide chasm of possible financial responses. And that's where I started to get concerned about being able to compare. From my perspective, I think about our civic improvements, it's all cost to the deal, right? It's not revenue, right? So that's why I was less concerned about bifurcating where those facilities could be located. I do have one, I think we're speaking about paragraph 5 on page 6, if you want to reference. This is where this programmatic issue is raised. Just on the Gene Willis Park issue, again, I said keeping it, we have a preference here that, again, we're expressing a preference whether we agree or not for a 27,500 square foot park at its current location or an alternate location on the project site. I would like to just go a step further and say adjacent to the underline, right? So that it's, or connected to the underline, because I think that is an important planning idea to kind of introduce to the RFP. That would be my modification for that subcategory on Gene Willis Park. Yes, Commissioner Lieben, did you want to say something on that topic?
Yeah, I concur.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to say.
I do as well.
Okay, so I think, Madam Vice Mayor, you don't have a preference? Commissioner Kaya, you don't have a preference? Okay. So if we could add that by way of modifications, there seems to be, the majority of us have that express preference, some connection to or adjacency to the underline for that park. If it's to be relocated, would be our preference. On the City Hall item, I would just say civic improvements, let's leave the language as it is and see what comes back. My strong preference personally would be to see, again, us move as much of the program if we can somewhere else to unlock the value, and just keep the City Hall or civic presence of the City Hall ceremonial and the library on this campus. Yes, sir.
Sorry, it's just the civic improvements doesn't actually read right now that we'd be open to any kind of relocation.
I believe it does. It says, at minimum, the proposal shall provide for the following civic improvements and uses with the minimum following net floor area, either on the project site or at an alternate location identified and secured by the proposer, subject to our consent and approval.
Oh, okay.
So, and then it goes into the elements. Huh? Page 6, it's paragraph 5, ma'am.
The actual page 6?
It's page 6 of 18, at least at the bottom reference there. Yeah. No, not of the file. My apologies. Okay. Any further comments on that paragraph? Okay. We had a prior hearing done. We'll consider that item closed. We had a conversation around workforce housing before. Is there a desire to express a minimum amount of workforce housing we want on the site? We had discussed 10% before, kind of consistent with our policy generally. Do we want to retain that preference, or do we want to just keep the RFP silent? What's the pleasure of the board? Madam Vice Mayor, You want to say something, go right ahead, come
You're
on.
not gonna believe this is coming from me.
You're going to say yes, I know you're going to say yes. You said yes last time.
Yes.
I know you did.
Yeah, I just,
There you go.
if it's if it's our property,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we want
To
a
ins-
part of it? And just so that y'all know, I've been speaking to the city attorney about trying to work out a way so that our employees that are considered first responders, necessary, blah, 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 have a preference and they get first pick. Like right now, we're having different things happening in this city and they're not benefiting us first. And while some ways of doing that are not legal, we're trying to find the ways that are so that we're taking care of us first and other people after. So when we see this workforce component come in, we need to have this in place so that it doesn't, so that our people don't end up as I see right now as 1,500 and something on a list of gazillions of people.
So you want to put a South Miami first?
Well, no, he's working on it. You look like you're dying over there.
Preference,
Yeah,
express preference for South Miami
It start-
first
well,
in the
it start-
RFP
It starts with a hero housing preference, which has been used in other
locations.
jurisdictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're
we'll
working
But we
your
have a
way-
yes to workforce
figure out
housing.
the others.
Yeah.
I would say
I hope we have them in time.
I would say absolutely yes again, in part because it's a property that we own and
Okay.
it's public
So
benefit.
that's two, Commissioner Kaye is a yes, I am as well. And so if you could include a preference or express preference for at least 10% of the
Well,
units to
and I
be,
think we need to understand what 10% means, because if there's 500 units, you know, so I think,
Yeah, so our question, or we have put here that you all are contemplating putting a 150 units per acre on, as a density, and we can talk about that when we talk about the zoning envelope. But nothing in this compels them to build to that density, or to even build residential at all. Perhaps it's an office project that they come up with. So how do you want me to?
I think it's if there's residential product, then we have, I think, the requirement that
Okay.
at least 10% be workforce
Okay.
housing. That would be my suggestion.
I agree.
Okay,
thank you.
okay, so, okay, Gene Willis Park, we addressed that. Any other thoughts on Gene Willis Park?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, but
You're
Commissioner,
No, I was just reiterating the idea that, you know, I want to make sure we don't have the unintended consequences. If we move it, that we're going to lose green space on the park that we put on the underline, even though I do actually think it'd be a pretty cool activation, but at the same time, I'm a little reticent in losing green space in the park.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
I think those, legally, I think we have to have equally land.
Again,
if we move it.
yeah, it's park space,
Yeah.
so I don't think it has to be
Park
open green space. I would tell you that I think, as wonderful as that space is visually,
Which one?
the one that we have today, I mean, it's
Yeah.
visually a very nice space. It's just,
it's not utilized.
it's not utilized, and I would tell you, I think the activation with the Silva Martin building, even if it renders less green space, probably would serve the park and its activation in the future in a much more positive way. So I personally don't have any reservations about that being an express preference where that historic building should be relocated to, if that's a consensus of the board, or at least an option that we would encourage people to explore. Commissioner Lieben?
Sorry, right, so in terms of Gene Willis, there's some trees that were planted there, and there's some significance to it. Just some of those trees, maybe we have to include that, relocating them. Some trees, I believe, were planted in memory.
There's some
We'll
trees,
look
might
into
say,
that.
from David Fairchild, and
Right.
so,
But the park was utilized for smoke breaks,
yes,
yes, and that was, so it's not a criticism, it's just the reality. It doesn't have direct visibility. So before, this commission was here when we had the first iteration with City Hall, and ironically, depending on me, I think Commissioner Kai brought up the same thing. What I had done before with the proposal, to go backwards, it was less dense, it was a different time, not just for the city, for everything. But they did a great job of incorporating the Silva Martin building into the project. If anyone has a chance, check out those renderings. But my idea was to further activate the underline, which you also suggested, Mayor, moving the green space there, but also move the Silva Martin building there. And it's in Bogota. It's the coolest coffee place. I took pictures, did a little presentation, ever been to was High-End Coffee and a do-it-yourself bike repair. And ironically, a building that looked almost exactly like the Silva Martin building and could incorporate smoothies and sandwiches. But I think that that would really, again, I always look for things to put South Miami on the map. Here's the bar and differentiate South Miami. That would be the only place along the underline. It would have character because of the building. It's a high-end place, even with the do-it-yourself bike repair. So if for my choice, that's what I'd like to see.
I would agree, and I think, to reference Columbia
And I
again.
believe Commissioner Kai brought up the same thing or something similar in a previous meeting.
I mean, to reference Columbia again, like Manizales, which I've had a chance to go to, has a building at their Civic Plaza. It's a hardscape plaza, by contrast, that's activated exactly the same way you described. And it makes for a very thriving and active public space.
Can I say something?
No, yeah, Madam Vice Mayor.
We've heard and we've seen that transplanting trees is not always very successful. I wonder if we would like, I keep hearing that, these trees has significance, but I wonder if we would consider the same species, and I'm gonna make this up, but hey, there's a mamey tree here, and that mamey tree is not gonna transfer well, so we're gonna put a new mamey tree of, a similar size over here. Is that something we're willing to discuss? Because if we're gonna draw a hard line on that tree has to move from A to B and it has to survive after that, I think we're gonna be disappointed no matter what we do.
I don't think that's an issue to address at this level. I mean, I think once we select a respondent and we're negotiating an agreement and we're approving a plan, right, that kind of, they're gonna show us a concept at this level. When we get into actually approving a project, at some point, I think we can get into the details about, tree relocations, and then what do we want by way of mitigation? Is it, do we just want, if you can't save it, then let's go and source larger trees.
Yeah.
So we can at least recreate the canopy to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah, because people are really stuck on those trees for
Yeah.
some reason.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right.
so moving on, minimum parking was my next comment. I don't know, I'm looking at page 7 of 18 of the RFP. It's section D2. We've expressed the development plan for parking that provides at a minimum. My only comment is I think these should be targets that maybe the developers are encouraged to meet, but I don't want to specify minimums. Again, selfishly, and no offense to my friends at the county, I don't know that I need to feel compelled to provide them 39 parking spaces where they aren't promised any today, but I do want to honor my agreement, which is to at least let them know that it's a target we're trying to hit. So,
Well, and I think you're gonna have flexibility between the library and these other spaces, these other parking spaces.
there should be some shared use, and again, a minimum allocation to me it represents more cost that ultimately comes out of our pocket, and so hence why I'm reluctant to specify hard minimums.
And it
Yes,
is
sir.
the new Todd zoning.
Correct.
Through the mayor, so this is including all parking, right? So guests, facilities, people, employees, et cetera, right?
Correct, yes. Again, if you want to prescribe a minimum for us, I'm fine with that. And Mr. City Attorney, at what point do we run afoul of our interlocal if we're not, are we required to ask for 39 spaces?
No, our interlocal, we are required to provide 15.
Okay, so I think we should provide a minimum of 15 with a goal of hitting 39 so that we stay within the realm of our contract and we allow, again, the market to respond to that request.
So, sorry, one thing you may want to address is the shared parking, because it could be office, right, residential, and then with City Hall, we have employees, and then with guests, we do not charge for parking, right? So if it's shared parking, I guess we have to distinguish that visitor parking 1 hour.
I think
Right.
this proposal, as I read it in the revenue sections or the finance sections, contemplates or suggests that they provide us, a base rent, maybe even a revenue share model, or show us what they expect by way of revenues in other line items, inclusive of parking. So it may not be free parking, but maybe it's, I'm not sure.
1 hour, whatever.
1 hour, or we'll end up subsidizing parking because we'll be collecting revenue from it. I don't know. I don't have a solution or an answer to that. It's not something I was focused on.
Well, I think that, sorry,
Go ahead, sir.
going to that level of detail would be flushed out when we go through this, but going to other big municipalities that I've gone through, they have employee parking separated, but that's a level of detail that we can work on later on. I think what's more important is just the number of parking spots that we allocate, that we prefer, and then we'll do the allocations after the fact.
Okay, the next item I had was scoring, and.
I'm sorry,
uh,
Mayor,
yes.
can I just, was there a minimum that you wanted to require for City Hall and the police department, or keep those as just straight targets?
Where'd these numbers come from, by the way?
These are based on the size of the,
Our standard
the
parking, we're at
30,000,
three per thousand.
30,000, and you
Yeah.
did bifurcate.
Mhm.
I mean, we're splicing apples here, so, I mean, I would just leave it as, reduce the parking for the library component, just leave it at that.
okay, and
Okay, so
leave the
let's-
others?
Leave the other, let's
As
leave the
minimum.
others, yeah, as minimums.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on page, this is the financial offer section. It's on page 9 of 18. I'm in section 1.7.3.1. So here frankly, I'm looking to staff and the manager. Do we really want to specify a minimum amount? My concern is if we specify a minimum, does that become the target?
It's a great point.
You know, that everyone tries to hit, and that's it, not go beyond.
Mhm.
So I'm inclined to kind of leave it blank, and by the same token, I would indicate that we're looking for proposed annual rent increases, and then periodic base rent adjustments, but I wouldn't specify necessarily the percentages, and see what comes back by way of an offer, because that might be, frankly,
That's part of the, yeah.
the best way to test the market.
Escalators,
Any thoughts on that point, colleagues?
Smart,
put a number.
thinking like a business instead
So,
of a charity.
so let's, if you can modify the section accordingly, it seems like that's the consensus of the board.
Okay.
Okay, the last comment I had was financial statements. So I'm moving on to,
We had spoken about that before, and we did say, let's just eliminate it, but, I mean, we have 5 reputable companies that we know they've done this. I don't think it's that important.
yeah, I think there's,
From,
should be a requirement at some point, if we select one, that they show us their financials.
Well, I think they're gonna have to show how they're gonna be financially capable of doing the project anyway.
So what do we want? I mean, do we want to just ask them to provide evidence of financial capability? You can ask for comfort letters from lenders,
Yeah, that should be suffice.
I mean, or, you know,
Yeah, I mean, usually when any deal that's been done, if they wanna go, they provide a line of credit or a letter from the bank saying that they're capable of doing this. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, this is what we talked about
we
before.
spoke
we did, yes, yeah.
And the timing, if you want to push it to once you select
Yeah.
a vendor that you're going to negotiate with, and maybe ask it at that point, you had also make.
I think they should provide some information of their financial relationships and statements of what they've been able to borrow in the market to support recent transactions, right? So, you know,
So they provided some of that at the RFQ stage. Would you want an additional round of?
I don't recall what they provided at the RFQ stage. Could you
We
refresh?
minimized the RFP stage as well, didn't we? We didn't ask for full financial statements.
We did, no, we didn't.
Yeah, we
did not
kept it
ask for
minimal.
Right, we pushed it to this, but we're gonna push this to the negotiation stage, I guess.
What-
is
I
I'm
guess
hearing.
the question, this, you know, is this in the realm of a trade secret in terms of the public records exemption or not? Madam City
So-
Attorney and Mr. City Attorney.
The-
The reason I ask is again, if I were sitting in the respondent's shoes,
Right.
I don't know that I would want my financial statements on the market because, you know, it could be used
Yeah.
by competitors to push people away from doing deals with me, right?
Understood.
So,
And there's not a clear exception. There is an exception for for public work, yeah, a public work, right? This has elements of a public work, but also has elements of private development. So it's unclear, but to your point, we could push this off to.
yeah, my preference would be to push this off until we get to a selected provider. They can basically, at that point, they've got the contract, they can put up or shut up their financial statements and we can move from there.
And wasn't this part of the application process, the RFQ?
It was. We just asked them for evidence of deals that they'd done, and again, we may want to ask for that same information with more detail. And ask them to source letters from prospective financial partners, whether it's equity partners and/or lenders.
You're talking about once they've been selected.
No, at this point, I think that would
I-
probably might make sense.
Well,
What we want to be careful of is that there's nothing here that requires them to have the ability within a certain time frame, because they may say, hey, we're trying to put the money together, financing has become
This is not,
problematic.
I think, you know, again, so going back to the scoring, right? Their financial plan, how they plan to execute the financing is important to determine whether this is a pie in the sky offer, to use the city attorney's language, or something that's real. And so I think to the extent that they identify for us, we did it this way on this deal, and we're proposing, and we had success, and we're proposing to do it the same way on this deal, right? And they provide us evidence of how they've executed a similar financial strategy in the past. I think that would be valuable information to us, for us to assess the validity of their approach. If all of a sudden they presented some sort of exotic financing proposal, right, that they've never used before, I would question whether or not that's, you know, an approach that's time-tested and true, right?
There certainly should be language that they would satisfy our financial advisors to their ability to carry out what they proposed in some sort of time frame, because they may have proposed something that is doable, but they haven't not been able to assemble the credit, and so, you know, we'll be sitting here waiting for them to put that money together. So there's got to be at some point, and maybe when you select the final one, that there's a burden that our financial advisor says, yeah, they're creditworthy, they can pull this off, and demonstrate the ability to do so.
Look,
Because they could hold this up for.
I mean, I think go ahead, Commissioner Kai, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm a little hesitant to put a burden and dependency on one particular firm or agency to make a decision like that. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily word it that way, in my particular opinion, but I understand what the gist is.
But that's what our financial advisor would do, right? They would have to tell us that they're comfortable that this firm, because if not, we could be waiting a year to put the financing together, right? And we're sitting and waiting for them. There's nothing that tells, that speaks to a timeline for them to be able to, and if our financial advisor cannot demonstrate that early on, that's going to be a red
So,
flag.
Mr. Manager, I think, for example, let's just use an example of a product type. So if someone proposed to build an office building, right? And they propose to build it in a phase in the next 24 months, more likely than not, they're not going to get credit to do that, right? So, I mean, we'll be able to discern that. Now, that's not to say that in a later phase, an office building would be a great addition to this campus. But I think we'll have enough market knowledge between council and our FA to make those determinations. I guess the question is, what do we want the respondents to provide by way of evidence of their ability to execute the financing plan? And so I think what I don't want to see is someone comes up with a particularly rich deal, right? It seems very attractive financially, but it's predicated on some exotic financing that they've never used before, that they don't have a commercial or institutional relationship to leverage, right? And so I think if we're getting some information about how they've executed other projects, who they've called on for capital, right? And then said from that same capital partner, let's just pick Goldman Sachs, right? It's provided us whatever, $100 million credit facility to build this project. They're interested in financing this deal. And there's a comfort letter from that same provider to me that says, okay, this is in the realm of the reasonable, right? And when we select them, they can provide us financial statements. And if not, we've got an alternative bidder that we can then turn to if we're not satisfied with their ability to perform, right? But we haven't put everyone's financial records into the public record, which is, I'm concerned people saying, you know what, this sounds like a wonderful opportunity, but I don't want all of my laundry out there if I'm not going to get the deal, right?
So can I add?
Sure, please.
So that was my recommendation, but I think what I was just also thinking about was that someone said something about the timing of all this. What do we have in place, and maybe I didn't read it correctly, but what do we have in place that if they don't execute within a certain time frame, whether, you know, in the industry, if you make a deposit, they don't comply, their due diligence and all that.
That's a contract issue. I think that'll follow this process, Commissioner.
Okay.
So I think they're gonna give us their best sense of the schedule, the timing, how they would finance it. Ultimately, whatever they're held to, I think it would be born of the development agreement that we negotiate with them.
Oh, that's part of okay.
Or the lease agreement. Am I misspeaking?
That would be addressed in the agreements that will be negotiated. Now, what we have in here, that Lily was just reminding me, there is a proposal guarantee if they pull out during the proposal process.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, if they've committed to certain things if they've submitted a proposal.
So what does that look like?
It is we have it right now at $50,000 as basically like a bond.
And is there time limits?
So that's intended for cost recovery, is it not?
No. That provision is intended for someone saying, I will build 500 units and I will pay you guys $8 million, right? And you go through the process, you select them, and then they, while you're negotiating the deal, they're like, well, we were just kidding, we can only build 100
That's what I
units,
was asking
and we're gonna
about.
pay you $2 million. That's what that's intended to cover.
I mean, I mean, that sounds wonderful. I mean, the people that I see in this process, I mean, I know all but one of them, and they all do these deals regularly. I think if they did that to us, it'd be the absolute worst thing they could do, because it would, in my opinion, kill their prospects to do a deal anywhere else in this town again. So
But Mayor, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
But we should protect ourselves that way, right? Like, I agree with you that the highly unlikelihood that they would do that is near zero, but the language should say that, and we should be protected. You never know what the.
But we want to signal that we're gonna require a deposit at execution of the lease, or we're gonna require them to provide a deposit now at the RFP stage.
Yes.
I think it's
at the
two separate
RFP
things.
stage.
What?
Proposal guarantee at this stage of submittal
But-
of their response.
Again, I don't understand the logic of that. If you could help me understand. I understand from a cost recovery perspective, because we're gonna engage professionals to look at the deal, that we would ask them to pony up some cash, and it's just the cost of doing business, right? Because we have costs. But the guarantee a portion of their financial proposal at this stage, to me, seems very premature. And again, we're asking respondents to tie up money that they would be using to pursue other deals, but there's no guarantee they would get this one. Certainly, when we're going to negotiate a contract with them, I have no problem asking them to say, you want to guarantee some portion of X number of years of payments, we can have that negotiation with them. But I think at this stage, to me, it just seems very early.
I don't disagree with that, Mayor, but I think that language needs to be understood, that moving forward, that's gonna be the case, right? So maybe semantics-wise, we're not gonna be at that position, but moving forward, once we negotiate the contracts with them, they have an understanding that's what's gonna happen.
If I may, Mayor, the other thing that it covers, a proposal guarantee, and it's on page 516 of your agenda. Also, they have to hold their proposal in place for 180 days. In other words, you submitted a proposal, day 31, you can't pull and say, I'm withdrawing my proposal. So you guarantee that your proposal is valid and active for 180 days after you submit it. It's proposal guarantee, it's not really a deposit.
I guess my question is, is this standard practice in this process? To me, it seems pretty novel. I don't know, maybe I'm just not that well
In
informed.
projects of this size, yes, there is a proposal guarantee.
And what is the typical size of the proposal guarantee? Is it in the order of $50,000, or is it in the order of
I mean, that would need
guaranteeing
to-
it's like some portion of the financial proposal?
I-
Because that's the part, the part that you suggested, which is cost recovery. We could easily spend $250,000 in this process with someone going through a review, right? We have 5 proposals here, so if we get 50 grand apiece, I think we're doing a pretty decent job of covering our downside in terms of professional fee exposure. But where I struggle, and again, I'm gonna shut up now and listen, is going and saying, guarantee me a portion of your financial proposal at this stage when I've promised you nothing. Sorry, colleagues, who wants to speak? Madam Vice Mayor.
I agree with you. That's it.
Commissioner Liebman, any thoughts?
Relish that moment.
I'm with you. I'm more interested in cost recovery.
Mr. Kaya?
Or you already know what I said about it.
Okay. Commissioner Corey?
Yeah, I'm fine with just focusing on cost recovery as well.
Okay. Are we comfortable then with the cost recovery amount?
What's the cost recovery at, right?
It's right now, it's at $50,000.
Well, it's at
$7,500
at this stage.
At this stage.
$7,500 per proposer, and then it's at $50,000 if you, $50,000 initial deposit if you are selected for an award.
If you're selected.
If you're selected, correct. It's a deposit, and then when that gets depleted, we're going to require it be renewed.
Okay. So, Mr. City Manager, do we have a sense of what our costs will be through selection? Rough order of magnitude estimate. And we're looking at what, 35,000, what's 7,500, what's $2,500 more, so 37.5, right? For
Yeah,
for this
Pro-
phase? I think
probably
that's,
more.
I think that's light.
I mean, it's really difficult at this stage, given the amount of hours, if you will, that may be required, but I would say higher than that.
I mean, I would just throw out $25,000 as the first deposit, and then we're probably looking at, if we're gonna really negotiate something, I'd say probably, I don't know, $150,000 to $250,000 by way of a deposit, if the person is selected.
Yeah, I think the CFO was under the same, that we were charging a little too low, so I agree with the mayor on
Yeah,
those numbers.
yeah. I mean, if you look at it from a percentage of what this deal, would be the value of development
It's
of this.
small,
it's
yeah.
peanuts.
yes, yeah.
Obviously, it's not my money, but it's still relative to the size of the deal. If you're having issues with that, then you shouldn't be in the business. Yeah.
Okay, so 25 and 250, is that what we want to ask for? I'm just making sure I heard correctly.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that's all I had by way of comments. Anything? No, I know. I wanted to ask. I want to ask. What else did I miss on the list? Because I lost track.
It was zoning envelope.
Zoning envelope. Okay. Who wants to start there? I've been talking too much.
Well, can we start with what we currently have proposed as a zoning envelope
Sure.
in our development study?
Sure, I'll just, what you have according to your development study the notes that I have is, base height of 8 stories with bonuses to allow a total of 14 stories, 150 units per acre. That was the general envelope that we provided. We did provide in the RFP or more stories.
Mr. Attorney, on the bonus side, how does one qualify for the bonuses under that schedule?
And those are yet
Would the civic improvements qualify for the bonuses?
those are yet to be determined.
They should be.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly was going to be my point. I think they should, again, because we're dealing with other issues, I think the civic improvements should be credited towards achieving the maximum envelope. Commissioner Lehman, does that anticipate your concern?
Right, as long as we're protected from
Live local.
Live local.
Yeah, yes.
I was going with live local, not live work, but live local. I would want this to be the most dense zoning because we have to generate the highest return for the stakeholders, which are the taxpayers.
So right now, then, we're at, let's just say 14 stories, assuming the bonuses are in place, and you suggested 150 units an acre, correct? That's what we've provided in
That you guys had talked about.
provided in the other district.
Yes.
Madam Vice Mayor.
Are we going to have a consideration of any more height at all in this location, or are we all comfortable with 14 stories?
This is the point where we discuss that. So you have thoughts on that topic?
Well, we always know what I think about height. I'm
what
not
is it?
afraid of
What is
height.
that? What is your thought about height,
I'm
ma'am?
not afraid of height. So I'm probably not the driving force in where we want to land because this is a commercial area. We've got height we've got, is it 13 across the street? We've got 10 earmarked in the lot that's empty. So are we comfortable with 14? Are we comfortable with 16? Are we comfortable with 18? I'm not the Bob Barker, like, the price is right on that, because we know I like height.
I think that, through the mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I think one of the last numbers that we spoke about was Todd Court being at 15 with bonuses. I know that it's been going back and forth between 14 and 15, depending on different opportunities that we've seen in the market recently.
Okay, I don't think the difference between 14 and 15 is that great. If it's 15, I'm fine.
You
So,
guys, sorry.
You're fine with 15?
yeah, I
So
don't,
let's-
as long as we are protecting our single-family neighborhoods by having it be bonus-driven, and that the bonuses in this case are satisfied through the provision of the civic improvements.
I want to ask something. Do we want to take what we saw at the Avalon Bay project and have it be built into this where, remember, they asked for an additional floor that isn't actually a floor? It was the elevator shaft that goes all the way up, so that if there has to be maintenance, it doesn't need a crane, considering that everything that goes around this location is a main street or a train. Do you remember where they
Yeah, no,
asked
I
for
don't,
that
I don't
extra
think that
floor?
would classify as a story or in our zoning code, so I don't foresee that being an issue. I think they'd be allowed to have a protrusion above the maximum height for those maintenance or service elements, but I'll let the city attorney speak to that.
Yeah, those will be addressed, those are being addressed by Mark Alvarez, and in the same manner as it was done.
As what we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
so that
that's
you can
just
have
common sense.
Rooftop infrastructure.
Okay.
Further comments? Sir?
Right, when you consider the site, it's, number one, it's publicly owned. It is, right, excluding the triangle, it's peninsula, right, it's framed by Sunset Drive and US 1, hospital. You have plenty of ambient noise from US 1 and from Metro Rail. It's as close to Metro Rail as you can possibly get. And then directly across the street, it's 33 stories. So I really want to generate the highest return for the city, for the taxpayers. So for me, I'm with the vice mayor. Again, tricky. It's public. I don't know how we protect ourselves or insulate ourselves from Live Local, but I think this most important site to have the greatest density and height, because this is the site that will return the most to the taxpayers.
Yeah, so do we want to limit ourselves at 15, or do we want to think a little broader?
I think to distinguish the sites from Sunset Place, right? That's a site that's got, institutional use to the northeast, right? Commercial to the immediate east on the same side of US 1. It's not close to any residential. I'd be concerned about anything near that high profile on the site because, spitting distance from 62nd Avenue, you've got single-family resi. I just don't think it is closer to the transit station, which is the hard part of that analysis, but I think contextually, it's just closer to residential and will be more impactful from a visual perspective to adjacent neighborhoods, right? I mean, one of the people have said a lot of things to me about the new building coming up from Avalon Bay. Some are excited, some think it's pretty massive. I may share in some of those thoughts, but one thing I can tell you definitively is when I get to 76th Street, I still can't see it, right? Because the canopy obscures the 10-story building. I think if we go well above 15 stories, as you're suggesting, it's going to be visual from everywhere, right? It's going to be what you see over at 37th Avenue, which again, I'm not criticizing the project, it's an excellent project, but the sight line, you see that building from almost anywhere. And so that's my concern about going well above 15 stories.
Sorry, where in 62nd are you referring to? Potential townhouse project or behind 62nd Avenue?
Talking about the area,
Family?
just right behind the hospital, we've got single family,
Correct, okay, so the other side as well. So, and you think that from that street, in terms of the sight line and the trees, it's a thick canopy in that area, and you have the hospital. I don't think there's any way you can see from that street 15 stories with the hospital there and the tree canopy, as well as
I'm not worried about 15 stories. I was reacting to something like 33 stories.
No, but there's a happy medium in between.
There may be, I'm pretty happy at 15 stories, personally.
Well, do we want to have that discussion or have them give us something of a conversation?
My only concern about not setting a parameter is that then it becomes hard to evaluate all the proposals.
Okay.
If they want to provide us a development scenario beyond 15 stories, then they need to maybe break out the additional economics separately so that we can evaluate apples to apples. Because if we have an 18-story or 22-story or 24-story response, and someone comes in something at the minimum envelope, then I think the economics change substantially from that deal. That's my concern. If you want, again, if you guys want to allow for that and analyze it, for my money, I'll probably be at 15 stories across the board. But I mean, certainly there's no harm in making it an alternative.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Where's everybody?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was going to say, this is a Todd Core that we've been speaking about Todd Core for the longest. It's always been roughly around 14, 15 stories. I just don't, if we do this just for this particular building, I feel it's going to be very different throughout. And I don't know if we can spot, it's City Hall, I understand that. But if we spot zone this and let it be different than what we've already zoned for the whole core, I don't know if I would like that either. I think it's just massive.
Okay.
And we kind of want to keep, I thought we always wanted to keep that kind of the same, right? Like, be, why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I love playing devil's advocate in these conversations.
I would just say that I really do like the idea of it being Todd Corn at the 15. I think it'll be within character of the neighborhood. I think as developments come online around it, they could be at a similar height and we won't have that kind of conflict. They won't say that this was an unfair project because you were able to create special zoning for yourself. And like I said, from what we know is going up right around in this direct neighborhood, it does seem like it will be in character.
All right, then I think we have our answer.
Well, I think we haven't spoken about this. I mean,
No,
if you guys already made the answer, I don't want to speak anymore.
No, but think about it. Right now, we're
Well-
sitting 3-2, and three of you are at 15, so I think it's fair.
But let me say this. I don't think, I hate when we're doing the math on the votes here. We're trying to have a conversation. I'm certainly open. My preference, if I was choosing little things, I would probably choose 15 stories. Now, if you want to look at 18 stories and allow people to bring in a proposal that allows for a little bit more flexibility, let's write it up so that there's a base scenario so we can compare apples to apples. And then maybe if you want to allow for some additional height so that we can study what the economics, if it's that different, right? We can have that conversation too. I'm open to that conversation. I'm just telling you what my preference is. I don't want it to seem like it's a 3-2 vote and let's just not, let's just talk about it.
So I was going to say what I had said earlier. In previous meetings, 18, and maybe you were at 14. So my question is, if it's 18, 22, 24, how do we insulate ourselves from Live Local? Because it is a municipal project.
So I think one of the challenges is obviously, when we have a bonus structure, it costs people to achieve those bonuses, right? And here it costs them, here's costing them by virtue of providing the improvements. So I would want them satisfied by virtue of delivering the civic improvements. I don't know, how cost prohibitive achieving 18 stories is elsewhere. I think for a Live Local project, it might be fairly cost prohibitive, but I don't know what other project, remember, Live Local project, only 65% of the floor area has to be residential, right? One of the things you're seeing in Bell Harbor with that project is that the retail is really, really, really valuable. So even the carry on the units is worth it when you're getting $125, $150, per square foot rents. So who knows? We could evolve in a similar way where the office rents and the retail rents are really attractive. And someone says, you know what, I'll pay the bonuses to go up 18, 22, 24 stories because the balance of the project effectively helps subsidize the residential. We have that example today in South Miami with Madison Square, right? The retail is what makes the residential subsidies there work under that current project, right?
And that's a Family Dollar.
And that's a Family Dollar. So I think, it's a concern that I have. That's why I'm, in a different world without Live Local, I'd be much more bullish about because we would retain the autonomy. But at this point, I don't want, perfect to be the enemy of good.
I like your idea of making it 15 and saying, hey, if you want to go to 18, show me what you got.
Yeah, and I think we just need them to describe how the incremental economics break out so that we can reasonably analyze the difference. So, Mr. City Attorney, is there a artful way for you to do that?
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
Any objection to that approach? We just talked about it. To the gentleman on my right, are we fine with having kind of a minimum scenario and then allowing people to go beyond that and break out the economics?
I think that's what Todd Core had already done, but yeah,
Okay,
if we need to do that across the board, then we can do that.
Okay, fair enough.
I like Commissioner Lehman's approach of how to add more bonuses.
Right.
That's fine.
And it would also be a good way for us to know what we were potentially giving up if we want to pull it back. Like, at least we know. At least we know what kind of tax revenue we're giving up and everything like that.
What kind of leasing revenue? Yep.
Right.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues, on the list?
Are you guys okay with density? The density at 150?
Oh, yeah, I did want to speak to density.
Yeah.
I think, sorry. Mayor.
Go ahead, no, please. We're being informal today.
I think that, again, going back, and I'm going to follow Vice Mayor's kind of approach here, that we've had across the street, we're at 200 an acre, and that we're minimizing it here at 150 an acre. not really understanding the differences there, why we want to limit it to 150 instead of going to the 200. Especially in the market.
I'm working off of what the zoning study
I got it.
proposed, so if you want to go to 200, that's,
Question.
So all of Todd Core is currently at 150?
okay, in the zoning study, that's what, yeah, that's.
And what is the FAR? Is there a companion FAR, or is it just all envelope-based? I should know the answer to that question, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't have that right off the top of my head. Bear with me here.
Commissioner Liebman, while we've got a pause, why don't you jump in?
Thanks. While the city attorney looks it up, I just wanted to thank our city clerk. You did a great job tonight.
Yes.
You really did. Thank you. It was noticeable.
Yeah, whatever.
And Commissioner Kaya, you were right. We should have done it in the other order.
It's okay.
Okay.
95%.
Oh, shut up.
What we're researching something,
I
right?
think we're asking if there's a floor area ratio cap on development in Todd Core, or Todd, or TSD.
We did not have a floor area ratio cap.
Okay, so we basically are limited to the envelope and envelope and the density.
Yeah, we had a lot coverage of 80%.
Okay,
Is
so
that something that we're missing from the zoning study that we need to add? I mean, that'll be part of the inclusive. Anything that you do from a building perspective, we'll need to add that, no?
no,
We're
not
gonna leave it blank?
Not necessarily.
No, we were leaving it, what this proposed was regulating it with everything else, with setbacks, with your lot coverage, with all this, you know, maximum floor plate sizes over a certain height, that kind of thing.
Do we want to mess with the 150?
Do we want to just put a 200 unit acre cap and? So what we should do is, I don't know, I don't have an opinion. What's the will of the board?
I don't really know the consequences of the benefits of going from 150 to 200.
It's substantially more revenue per door. I mean, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
If you can build more units, we see more revenue. So that's definitely, what I do want to.
I guess sorry, Mayor. My concern wasn't necessarily with City Hall. I understand the benefits here.
Yeah.
Like for the rest of the Todd Core.
It's going to mean more trip generation for sure, whether it's pedestrian trips or vehicular trips.
I'm happy with that 150.
You're okay with 150?
Yeah, I'm fine with 150. I think that when we looked at the 200 across the street, we were looking at it as like an anomaly. We weren't looking at it as the new norm.
Okay. Commissioner Liebman.
No, it's dense across the street.
Yeah.
It was, and that was pre-Live Local. But
Yeah.
the commission was all similar to Fresh Market. We were hungry for some investment, right, for some progress, so.
I think we just leave it at 150.
But I'm not opposed to 200.
I just wanted to have the discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So let's just leave it as is my, I think, the consensus. And the only thing I wanted to add before we close and move on to the next item, on the workforce housing, I'm a big believer we should get units consistent with the unit mix all over. So I don't want to just get a bunch of studios. So if we can add what did you call it? It was a very nice term you used at that meeting the other day for the municipal coalition. Was it an equity clause or a parity clause, or what was it? It was very nice, honestly.
It was great, whatever you
That'd be
said.
proportionate.
I forgot to write that down, but yeah, I have to think about coining that phrase.
I forgot to remember.
Mr. Resio. Okay. So
Whatever you said
seeing no other items for discussion, are you, Madam City Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, did you want to talk about the dates and the timeline?
The dates and the timeline, would you like to run us through some dates and timelines and make sure that we can ratify them?
So what we had.
You need some time to make these modifications, so.
Yes. We had approximately 75 days for the RFP, for the proposers to put together their proposal. So we had that pushed to approximately August 9th, and then an evaluation period of 6 weeks with the selection, the manager's recommendation presented to the commission by October 1.
Okay, I would like to modify let's let the proposals out for 60 days.
60 days.
So we can buy ourselves a couple weeks. I think folks have probably already been working on their conceptual design, and we'll refine it based on the final product, but I think 60 days, given the experience the cohort of respondents has, is probably sufficient.
I was looking at Andrew shaking his head. I'm assuming that's true, right? Okay,
Yeah, he's
there you
good.
go.
Andrew's gonna be fine. He's not here.
Listen,
He's,
Andrew's slap happy, he has
we-
a baby.
we love him, but he doesn't count in this conversation. Come on. So 60 days, colleagues, is that okay?
Thank you.
It sounds like it makes sense.
Okay, so you'll walk us through the timeline then, quickly again?
We go 60 days, we're looking at, let's try to figure out some dates. So it's May 21st today, we're gonna need some time to get to implement all of this. What do you think, Mr. Iglesias? Yeah, we have a little bit of wiggle, yeah. Right.
Let's talk about the issue date. So let's say the issue date's June 3rd. Just pick, okay. Right, so we get this,
So from,
but-
June- yeah,
from June 3rd, what's 60 days?
60 days would put us at August,
3rd.
yeah, call it August 5th, I guess.
August
the
5th,
Monday.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then what happens after August 5th?
There's the evaluation process. It has to go to the evaluation committee.
Okay, that would be something we form internally, it does not require any sort of public hearing or discussion, since we won't
Correct.
be here that month, arguably?
The manager would, the way this is, yeah, they have to be notice meetings, they have to be public meetings, okay? So that could occur, and actually, the evaluation committee could be appointed before that date, so they're ready to go. So, once the proposals come in,
And I
they will
can
be
ask,
checked by
can I
staff.
ask you to put a pin in that? Colleagues, do we want to have the manager bring forward a recommendation as to who would serve on the evaluation committee that we want to ratify, or do we just want to delegate that to the manager exclusively? Thoughts on that?
Your question is, do we appoint or?
No, what I'm saying is, I think what would make sense is the manager brings forward,
Mhm.
if we want to, we can do it one of two ways. The manager puts together the evaluation committee at his discretion completely. Or we can ask him to bring forward a suggested evaluation committee composed of all the members that he would recommend for us to ratify. If you want to see
I'd like
and
to
have a window into that process.
I'd like
I
to
would.
see.
Okay. Is that the consensus? We at least, we want to see the people designated to serve on the
Mayor,
committee?
what was your opinion there?
You know, I'm fine either way. At the end of the day, I value the opinion of the evaluation committee, but I'm going to look at all the information, and
Okay.
I'll probably be a very hard judge of what we see, so.
And it doesn't seem to be something that will slow the timeline down.
It does not,
Do that,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, again, I guess the question is, do we want to see the composition and weigh in on it before it's finalized or not? That's the simple question from a process perspective.
I would like to see.
Okay, that's one yes. Commissioner Liebman?
While it provides transparency, we're only going to ratify, or we say, well, we want to replace someone, or so, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the
There's a consequence
benefit?
there, yeah. If we don't like it, it can extend it, you're right.
So it provides
Again,
transparency.
what I don't
but-
want, is again, I'm asking, I don't feel a particular need to be that in the weeds, right? Some of us have expressed before concerns about the fact that we didn't have windows into prior processes. This is obviously a very important process, one of the most important processes that we're going to supervise. Do we want to weigh in on the composition of that committee? I think you do. I'm going to guess most of us would, right? I'm probably the odd man out in that scenario. But, so I'd say at least let them bring it forward. If we have some serious concerns, we can have a conversation with the manager about possibly substituting or considering other voices on that committee.
Would that create any delays?
I don't think it has to. I think he can develop that while the RFP is.
Okay.
Again, let me ask that question, because the one question is, then those people are identified and can be contacted by, or potentially contacted by respondents. How do we handle the communication around?
Point of silence, they're prohibited from contacting.
Okay, so
the evaluation.
if the manager were to bring forward at a separate agenda his recommendations as to the evaluation committee membership, we can have a conversation, the cone of silence still applies.
Yeah,
to those
but
members.
you can have the conversation.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
at a public meeting, at a
Yes.
publicly noticed meeting. But once that meeting is over, they cannot be contacted.
Okay, understood.
Is the evaluation committee staff, or?
That's what
It could be, it looks, as I understood the manager's first comment, it's going to be advised by the technical professionals we've hired, so PFM, outside counsel, our appraiser. obviously your city attorneys, and then we probably have staff would be, I don't know, Mr. Manager, did you want to elaborate on what your thoughts are on the evaluation committee at this point?
No, yeah, certainly. I mean, as currently the process allows, the manager would appoint individuals and try to diversify the views and skill set of those individuals, right, to get the best content out of it. So who they are up front totally, something I'm going to think hard and through, but it definitely will be some staff members and certainly some of the technical individuals that are part of it. There could be somebody outside in the community that
We're
could
gonna
add
have,
some
we're gonna have
value.
county representation on that board as well, because they're, I think, per our interlocal, we have to incorporate them, so.
Not as an evaluating member. I believe they can sit on the committee
Okay.
and provide input, but they're not determining.
Scoring necessarily.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
got it.
Good to know.
So,
Again, so direction for the manager to bring back that as an item for our discussion. What's the preference? Yes? No, yes?
I'm indifferent. So.
Indifferent, yes? Okay, let's just bring it back, okay?
and even if it's just to tell us.
I think that would be helpful.
I think that's probably the smartest way. I don't necessarily think that we all need to provide feedback, but we need to know who it is.
Okay.
Just considering different skill sets, if someone on the commission felt strongly that they had a good recommendation, can they recommend someone? This isn't personal, I'm not
By all
recommending
means,
anyone.
yes, I think
Okay.
you should
So
feel
that's
free
a way for
to.
the commission to be more engaged.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So we said that publicly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, last, Mr. City Attorney, timeline again, if you can reiterate.
So the 60 days for response from proposers. This is assuming like a June 3rd issue date. That 60 days gets us to August 5th for the responses. The evaluation committee would then have 5 weeks to evaluate the proposals, have all their meetings, provide their recommendation to their evaluation to the manager. By September 13th, the manager would then formulate his recommendation to you, and you all would meet on October 1st to consider the manager's recommendation and presumably make the award.
So when would oral presentations happen in that process, in the event we wanted them?
That's a good question. We need to build in some buffer.
So I think as a target, we should try to see if we can get on the September 17th agenda.
For selection.
For first, I mean.
For
So
presentations or?
you would minimize the 5-week selection time, lower that, increase, we need to.
Is that not feasible, sir? I mean, no?
Yeah, because the committee does their work, and obviously there's got to be a little time for me to, transition that into a recommendation for
Sure,
you.
no, I understood.
So we had cut out, we had 6 weeks originally, and then we had discussed it, maybe, okay, shave 5 weeks within that time frame. The committee would conclude their work and push it over to me, staff would push it over to me, so there's a little, so that would make it really, really.
So let me
tight.
ask, in the 5 weeks that the committee's gonna have it, they're gonna conduct the oral presentations, we're not, right? Correct?
They will,
we join them?
and
We can, look, I think, guys, what I would say is you can watch the entire record, right? That's gonna be recorded, it's gonna be available, you can sit in on the meetings and listen. We can't participate, but they're open to us like any other member of the public. So you'll have a window in if you want to avail yourself of that opportunity, either on tape or live and direct. What I'm asking is, in that 4 or 5 week period that they've got it, do you think it's feasible for them to do a first evaluation, do oral presentations, and forward you a recommendation?
within the 5 weeks?
Or within 4 weeks? Again, I'm,
Yeah.
again.
It's pretty aggressive for.
The whole thing, this whole timeline is aggressive, so.
That's pretty aggressive for something of this magnitude, and,
Yeah.
right, and they're relying on technical expertise and financial information, so, I would say, 5 weeks would probably be a little bit more reasonable, because remember, then there's a turnaround time to get an agenda item ready, for your review and action, October, is it October 1?
October 1.
Yeah. And then within that time frame, as you mentioned, it not only the analysis and the meeting, they may meet more than one, multiple times and include oral presentations. and then convene, to make a decision and a recommendation on their scoring. So it's a lot for this type of deal for a group.
Okay, so October 1st. Any thoughts, colleagues?
So in terms of the timeline, and I apologize in advance, I was going to hypothetically ask what the completion, right, projected completion date would be. But in that line of thought, I'm going to take a couple steps back here. One of the benefits of locating all the facilities and the inspection station is that can be built, I need you for this, Mayor, that can be built prior to us vacating the site. So have we even discussed that? Shouldn't that be part of the RFP? Where's the city going to go if we're going to be in the same site?
That's what the RFP has drafted, requires them to explain if we're gonna relocate off-site, there's
no language.
I don't think there's any, it's not incumbent on the respondent alone, but they're gonna tell us where they would put us. We're gonna have to then negotiate with that party as to where we would go in the interim. I mean, look, there's going to be some displacement at
Right,
some level.
okay.
I mean, I don't know, and we don't have all the answers. Part of that's gonna be driven by what the economics look like, I think, Commissioner.
We spoke to sixth graders about that today.
Well, okay, what is your opinion of the add-on item? Like, just let's take 5 minutes.
Okay, so I think we need a motion on this to approve the RFP. Okay.
Yes.
I
Okay.
move the
Okay, so
RFP.
we have a motion with the modifications discussed. So, okay, moved by Commissioner Lieben, is there
I'll
a second? Okay, so a motion by Commissioner Lieben, a second by the Vice Mayor. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes,
Microphone.
it is. Oh,
You know.
Commissioner Kaye?
yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
I'm gonna just test my bladder, let's go.
Okay. We're gonna take, a 5-minute break?
No, let's get this done, come
Oh,
on. I wanna go home, go to
Okay,
sleep.
so then we're just reading the add-on.
So if you could read the item, please.
If you fail, it's on video.
A resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, retroactively approving and authorizing the waiver of certain event-related fees and costs in the amount of $1,489.30 pursuant to Section 15B-6 of the City Code for a special event known as the Jaden Higgins Youth Football Camp, presented by First Round Management, held on May 19th, 2024, at Palmer Park.
Okay, I don't know who the sponsor of this item is, and I'm not familiar with it, so who's?
Okay, would you like to take it, or would you like me to take it?
You got it.
Okay. We had this past weekend Jaden Higgins, which is a South Miami resident, graduated from Westminster Christian School and is now playing in the college arena. He had a camp that was free for children to come. It was successful. I passed by, Commissioner Kaya passed by. It was something that I feel was a bit of a moving target because, as I said, they're young. This was put together by a young group of guys. And so when they got to the end is when everybody was like, hold on, wait, we didn't ask for fees to be waived. So what I'm proposing is what we do for everybody else, which is to have them pay the hard costs, which is the police department and the recreational staff, and then we waive the rest, which comes out to $1,489. This was something that they're doing is as a benefit to our community, and making them suffer for not knowing as young guys, I think is the wrong message.
So I want to ask a question about that. Because the references, it doesn't reference Jaden Higgins or the Jaden Higgins Foundation, right? It references First Round Management, and I know Maliki Kawa, and he's a great guy, and in many respects has done a lot for the Grey Ghosts when they were part of the program. I think a couple of his teams may have exited the program last year. I know I had talked to him about some concerns he had about the league that we play in. So was the sponsor the athlete, or was the sponsor the agency? That was the question I had.
I think they just kind of pulled it all together. everybody that I spoke to,
So who paid the fees, I guess is the way to simplify
they
the
got
question.
it from donations, literally.
No,
we donated.
no, I understand that, but again, who would be responsible for paying whatever amount we don't choose to waive? That's the only question I really have.
The group of guys.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Good evening. The applicant is the management company, First Round Management.
Okay, so if we don't waive all or a portion of the fees, they'd be responsible for paying for the cost of the event.
That is correct.
Have they paid it already?
Yes.
So look, I think this is, I'm torn about this one because I know we do this, but we tend to do it more often than not for charitable organizations. Again, I really admire this guy this is an agent who's built an incredible business, is situated near here. But I also want to recognize the conflict here, right? Because I think what we're doing here, it's not the athlete that's a sponsor, it's the sports agency. And in today's day and age in college football, a big part of his business is negotiating NIL deals for athletes. And so I don't want to be blind to the fact that these events, while they have a charitable focus, also inure to the bottom line benefit of the athlete and the agency, right? To the extent that it builds the brand of the athlete, because that's how they're getting compensated these days. So I'm going to defer to you guys as to how you want to handle it, but I wanted to just say that so that we're aware of, I think, the complexity. It's a little bit more complex than I think on its face. It's why I didn't necessarily donate when I wasn't kind of indirectly approached. I think many of us were. I was a little bit unclear as to what was actually happening. It seemed a little bit last minute. So I was I had some trepidation about it when I heard about it. I think it's a great thing. I don't know how many of our kids were served. I think it seemed like it was a very well organized event. But I think, just facts are facts. This is not, I know we've had concerns about for-profit events getting support before. This I would put in the realm of the for-profit for that reason.
And yet we do
No,
it.
I know, but I just wanted to.
And that's the thing.
And I don't,
like-
I understand, but I know we had that conversation before, but we did it in a different context, right? I think we did the for-profit event there in an area where we need it because we want to build up our business center. That's the only distinction I would draw. We could have done this differently, right? And we could have done it through we could have done it through sponsoring it through the own, donor advice fund that we set up and had them contribute to that and then waive the fees and pay the difference out of that. Again, I'm just a little bit, again, it's a very gray area. Like this guy does, I know him personally. I've seen him at flag football. We coached opposed to each other. He kicked the living daylights out of my team because his teams are just super teams.
Then definitely don't waive it.
They don't. No. That's not the reason why. That's not the reason why. But he does an amazing job. He writes checks out of his pocket to get kids new uniforms every year. I know we approved this uniform item. His teams always are wearing new gear. It's funded out of his pocket. So I have tremendous respect for what he's done. I'm not trying to, but I do. There also is, I think there are multiple layers of motives here, right? I think if it was the Athletes Foundation, I probably would say no problem, right? Maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but it is in this case the sports agency that's the promoter of the event, right? And again, they get compensated to negotiate NIL deals with universities. That all said, as long as we're aware of it, okay, I'm happy to support it because on balance, I think, we'll have that conversation for future events. But if you want to move the item, I will certainly vote for it, okay?
Okay, I would like to simply because I look at it a little differently than you do. I look at it as he is a gentleman who is from our city.
Yeah, he went to
Did
South
it-
Miami High. Yeah, he did.
Well, he
So-
graduated from Westminster.
No, not the football player.
No, I'm talking about the football player.
I'm talking about the guy who
J.D.
runs the business, so yeah.
J.D.
So on another level, another
Yeah,
connection to South Miami.
And so there are people doing something for our community in our park, and while I think it shifted and grooved a little bit from where they were originally looking at it, I don't see a downside in doing for them what we've done for others. I see what you're talking about. My answer would be, why wouldn't we want to support you?
Like I said, I'm a yes. I just
Yeah.
wanted to highlight that
So-
issue.
So you move the motion?
I'll-
I just have a question
Go ahead.
before we vote. I appreciate all the context Mayor provided. My question is, so who would, because they were saving someone money, they made a payment, we're going to refund it. Are we helping Jaden, young athlete, or we're helping a sports agent?
No, that's why I wanted to just be clear, because I was unclear, but when I read the header,
So we're
I
helping a
heard-
sports agent.
we're helping I think we're helping refund the money to the business that basically paid the fees. So I want to be clear about that, okay? Because I know we've had concerns about it in another context. Again, I think net positive, it's 4 kids.
So this does not adversely impact Jaden one way or the other, right?
Well, I think if they're doing it again next year, I want them to think of us first. I mean, it's not like Jaden Higgins' star is going down.
I've never heard of him. He's probably a great young man. I don't.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
again,
he's-
and I think
know
the more we can
parents.
get kids
You-
who were
oh,
former,
you know his parents.
the more we can get kids that were former members of, or connected to South Miami to come back and do things in the community, it's all for the better. Again, I said my piece. I just,
Yeah, okay, so do we want to?
We have a motion for the vice mayor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Kaye. Any further comments? Okay, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Microphone.
Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich?
Yes,
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Item passes.
thanks, guys.
Thank you. And again, good job to our city clerk. Thank you.